Charter Workshop is back in session. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco.
Here.
Miranda. Ertak.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Goods. Vieira.
Here.
Citro.
Here. Madam Facilitator.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I thought it might be helpful just to review the discussion protocols and to mention that I think you're all doing very well with them, and I'm getting feedback on the mic now, which I did not earlier. Is anybody managing that? got a little bit of feedback. We're sharing the floor, making sure that we can allow each speaker to finish their comments. This one's tough because we have areas that are important to us, but strive toward economy of words, withholding any personalizing of comments so that it's from your experience, and last, toward our desired outcomes. Everybody all right with that? Good.
I think we ought to add an extra one that is, you can say whatever you want for as long as you want if today is your birthday.
I think I understand that there is a birthday today.
I guess it's talking about me, I don't have a birthday, I'm 28.
Okay,
Backwards.
good. Where we left off was section 401. The next section in 4 is 402. Anyone there making a comment? Otherwise, we'll proceed to Article 5.
And it looks like we kind of know the way the vote's going, so if you guys want to do these fast, we can do them really fast. But I would make a motion to, and we were accused of bringing up things that we brought in the Charter Review Commission, but I will bring this one up just because
I'm sorry, Mr. Carlson, I'm having difficulty
Oh,
understanding.
okay. Yeah, I would like to make a motion regarding 4.01, and we were accused in advance of bringing it, of whether we would bring up things that were in the Charter Review Commission, and I only have one, but I want to bring it up just so we can have an up or down vote. In the first paragraph here, if you look toward the bottom, it says, "No person who has or but for resignation would have served as mayor for 2 consecutive full terms shall be elected as mayor for the succeeding term." I would like to make a motion that we, again, have the city attorney's outside attorney come back to us on the first date of ordinance 2 to present this, removing the word, this 4.01, removing the word consecutive and removing the term for the succeeding term. And so the effect of that is that a person who has been mayor for 2 full terms, not a partial term, but for 2 full terms, can't run again. The way it is now is you run 2 consecutive terms and then you can take a break and come back. So I imagine I know the way the vote's going to go, but I would just like to make the motion, see if I get a second, and then we can vote up or down. Thank you.
All right. Yes, could you concisely just state the actual piece and the page? We've got note takers
Yeah, so
wanting to follow.
So in the, I don't know which sentence this is, but in the sentence that starts with no person and under 4.01, the first paragraph of 4.01, my motion is to remove the word consecutive and remove the words for the succeeding term. So the new sentence would read, no person who has or but for resignation would have served as mayor for 2 full terms shall be elected as mayor.
Take out consecutive.
And take out for the succeeding term.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Yes, I second.
And the argument against this is, well, it's up to the voters to decide whether they want to bring somebody back, but it's also up to the voters to decide whether they want to approve this. If they reject it, then they show that they want to be able to vote for whomever they want. If they approve it, they show that they don't want somebody coming back.
Yes. Any other discussion? I'm sorry, I asked for the motion or the second. Any other discussion? Mr. Miranda?
I can appreciate what Councilmember Carlson is saying, but again, I believe it's up to the public.
I'm sorry.
I believe it's up to the public.
Okay. Which would support the notion that it would go on the ballot. Am I correct?
If the public wants it, if you're going to put it on the ballot without taking those things out, then that person can't run again. It's not going like this on the ballot. It's going to be with what he's just said. So the ballot would be there, but that person cannot run again, period, whether it passes or doesn't pass in a way, because if not, he's got to go back to the original thing.
Did you get that as notes?
Yeah, we're trying.
Yes. And we did have a second, and let's call for a vote on that. We need 4 to put that on the ballot. We have 1, 2,
I'm not understand
3.
what you're saying.
The way I understand this, the way it reads now, anybody who's mayor in the past or in the future can have 2 full terms. Then he can't or she can't run again. But if he wants to run 8 years later or 4 years later, and that, the ballot, the people want that person, who am I to deny him the right to be on the ballot? That's all.
And my argument is we're asking the voters to decide whether they have that right or not, so. We're voting?
Yes, voting, we see show of hands.
Show of hands. 2, motion.
2, doesn't carry, stays as it is for the time being. Thank you.
And the 2 are, just so you know, or however you want to announce it, but by a show of hands, by audio, this is being audio
It was
taped.
Carlson and Hurtak.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for that reminder. Appreciate that. Excuse me, I'm wondering if you can ask the people in the hall. It's carrying through the door. Thank you. Article 5, start with 501 departments and go to 503 additional duties. Any discussion on section 5? Please indicate with a show of your hand. Mr. Carlson, yes, which section?
Several. And what I did is I broke these up into little pieces so that we can discuss the pieces, and again, we can just get a quick up or down vote. It sounds like they're gonna go down, but I want to at least have the vote so the public can see. 5.01, I would suggest adding, I said A here, but I would add at the end that, quote, "The legal department is a department of the city as described in this section 5.01, whose purpose is to provide legal advice to its clients as defined below. It is not the judicial branch of the city." So I guess I'm suggesting putting this in 5.01A, at the end of 5.01A. So the idea here is to clarify, just because the city attorney has it's not these exact words, but the final official legal representative for the city. It doesn't necessarily say that it has the final legal opinion, but the final official legal representative for the city. It does not mean that the city attorney is a judge or jury. And by the way, their outside attorneys are not judge and jury, although some recently have acted as if they were. The idea here is to clearly state the legal department is under the head department. It's not a branch of government. And so all this does is it says, the most important line is the last one. It's not the judicial branch of the city. So I'd like to move that the city attorney's outside attorney come back on the date that we picked for the first reading to add at the end of 5.01A, quote, "The legal department is a department of the city as described in this section 5.01, whose purpose is to provide legal advice to its clients as defined below. It is not the judicial branch of the city."
Did I see you hand something to Mr. Shelby? Was there something in print? Thank you.
If there's no second, then we can move to the next one.
Oh, I'll second it.
Well, let me, if I may,
Discussion? Yes, sir.
I'm looking at a word here that says, "His office shall be in City Hall." I don't think it should be just his.
Sometimes one can use the gender neutral with their, his, her.
I think you're looking at it.
Except that last year, or rather when this body convened, as four of us at least that were on the Charter Review Commission, that was one of the first things we did was request everything go to gender neutral language.
Okay.
But even in the most updated copy of the charter, it still has yet to be done. So maybe we should just have that again, because it's all over the place.
And mine, just so everybody knows who's watching, my proposal does not have pronouns in it, so it's irrelevant to the proposal I made, but yes,
Just
it's
has the
still.
noun.
Yeah,
Yes.
the charter was not modified per our instructions
Right.
earlier. but
So we had a
All it
second.
says, it clearly states that the legal department is not the judicial branch of the city. It simply serves to give legal advice, which is what the charter says. It just clarifies it further for the public.
Yes. Ms. Hurtak had seconded that, and ready for the vote? As it stated, let's see the hands. Does not carry, voted by Carlson, Hurtak, and Goods. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is, same thing,
Yes, again, if you can just give us about which section and.
Yeah,
A or B.
5.01, just adding to the end of 5.01A, the quote, "The city attorney is appointed by the mayor according to section 6.03 below. The city attorney may be removed by the mayor or by a supermajority 5-member vote of city council." The purpose of this is that the city attorney, by bar rules, has to represent city council, but that office has not. And without getting into all the details, anybody who looks at the media can see that the city attorney has not. And so what this does is it simply says that the city attorney, unlike the communication department, or the other department heads, communication department technically should report to city council, but at the very least, the city attorney, because they're obligated by Florida bar rules, they should also report to city council. And all this does is it says, look, if we end up with a particularly bad city attorney who only listens to the mayor and is giving us biased advice, we have by a supermajority, or if my colleagues don't like supermajority, we can go to 4, but by a supermajority, city council can remove that person. And that would be a further incentive for the person to be objective in reviewing city council. That by itself, the essence of the problems we've been facing the last 2-3 years are not coming from city council. It's not personality conflicts. It's nothing from city council. It's because we've been getting biased viewpoints and bully tactics. And what we need to do is focus on making sure the city attorney is objective. If the city attorney is objective, then the opinions we get are going to be clear. But again, I take it for an up or down vote.
So that's your motion to add
Yes.
that language?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
No, I want to speak on it. I don't know if there's a second or not.
I'm seconding.
All right, I want to speak
Yes,
on
Ms.
it.
Hurtak, yes,
And I
Mr.
understand,
Miranda.
and I can appreciate what he's saying, what Mr. Carlson is saying. However, what if that, not this board, but another board in the future, just wants to get rid of a city attorney, and they don't, whatever reason, that conflict between the council and the city attorney with 5 votes, that means that city attorney is automatically out. Whether he or she was doing the job or not is irrelevant. And that's what I can't swallow. That it could be, not to say that this board does that, other boards in the future could make an argument that they just didn't like the opinions and they want to get rid of the city attorney. That's just why I
So to
can't-
clarify, you're saying that this does not indicate just cause?
Right. It doesn't say for what cause, it just says 5 votes.
Discussion's been held. Any other discussion on that topic? Mr. Goods?
I'm kind of confused, and I do respect Mr. Miranda's opinion all the time, because he's been here a long time, but earlier he talked about this council, 5 votes, if I'm not mistaken. He said 5 votes. So I'm confused now that we're saying no, but earlier we said, this council, anybody we need to do 5 votes. But I don't see that in the charter as it pertains to 5 votes, because what I'm understanding, once we appoint someone, we'll get to that section, but once we appoint somebody, they belong to the mayor, and we have no authority to do anything. So I know he says about 5 votes, so I'm confused about that. So if there's an explanation, because he's the general here, if he can explain that, because my interpretation is that once they're appointed and we give the go, it's over. We can't do anything. And it's somewhere in the charter, I don't know.
Mr. Miranda?
May I?
Yes.
I think the 5 votes is misunderstood. As the 5 votes is to override the mayor on an ordinance for or against. Certainly this council or any other council has the right. When we start going into department heads, and there's many of them in the city, what's to say that the attorney or the chief of police or the fire police, they're all department heads. So is the city attorney. So what are we saying then? We're just gonna pick on one and not the others for whatever reason? I mean, I'm looking at it much more objectively, I believe, long-term for the association to have an upswing and balance in the problems how they handle their job. I can't just leave it to one person. I may not like the city attorney, and I don't mind telling the city attorney one-on-one. That doesn't mean that I'm gonna fire him for that, because I don't like him. It's about the work performance, just like we have same thing, we could go to a city council attorney, do the same thing then. It doesn't say that. In fact, city council attorney can be reduced by 4 votes, not 5.
Thank you. Ms. Hurtak?
And actually, that feeds into a really good reason why we should, because the city attorney is the only director of any agency that should also report to us. So, no one can fire, the city council attorney except for us. But the city attorney is also supposed to work for us. None of the other heads of departments are supposed to work for us. So I mean, I think that argument is great, but it just feeds what Councilmember Carlson proposed, I believe, or at least it gave me more incentive to vote for it, following that rationale. So thank you.
So Ms. Hurtak, your point is that it's position specific.
Yes, that's exactly what it says. It says the city attorney, and the city attorney may be removed. It doesn't say anything about other department heads, because other department heads aren't supposed to represent us. Whereas the city attorney has a very specific role to represent the mayor, the city, and the city council. So in this case, it really is a person who should report to us, or not report to us, but, it's, if he or she is supposed to protect us. We've had differences in the past, recent past, about whether that has occurred.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Miranda, one more comment.
Not to beat a dead horse, when you understand, if you were the city attorney, any one of us, and you know that what you're going to say has to satisfy 5 council members, because I'm not saying this council again, any council, how would you feel every time you come to this chamber to do something, know that you got to satisfy 5 people instead of just the facts, ma'am, just like Jack Webb, only the facts, ma'am? How do you feel about that when you know that you have 5 votes that they can, bingo, you're out? That puts that person at a very big disadvantage.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, one more comment, and then I think let's
Yeah,
call for the vote.
we're like the board of directors of a corporation, and typically positions like this report to the board, and sometimes board and CEO, and sometimes the executives of the city like to belittle us and say, we only do land use or whatever, but we're also in charge of a $1.9 billion organization, and it's our duty to look through all these things. And I don't want to get in all the specifics, but we've had multiple cases, even in the last year, where the city attorney did not work in the best interest of city council. And I'll just read from section 5.01A. It says I'm just going to take excerpts. Talking about the city attorney is the legal advisor of the mayor, the city council, and committees thereof, and all of the several departments, officers, and boards of the city government. That wasn't followed at all in the last year. Also, we were told by a former city attorney that, we don't represent city council members individually. In the next paragraph or later on, it says, and defend the rights and interests of the city or any officer of the city. It doesn't say city council as a whole, it says any officer of the city in any suit or prosecution for any act in the discharge of his official duties wherein any estate, right, privilege, blah, blah, blah. And none of that happened in the last year. And so my point is that if a city attorney does not follow bar rules and represent their clients as defined in the charter, the only remedy we have is we can sue them or we can file a Florida bar complaint. And instead of doing that, because that will, when I talked about grave danger for the city, if we individually or collectively start filing lawsuits because the city attorney did not represent us individually or collectively, or we file bar complaints, that's going to send the city into chaos, and it's going to cause investors not want to come here. Instead, we can simply modify this language. The city attorney, by charter and by Florida bar rules, also reports to us already. The only thing is that they report to the mayor. If you hire an outside attorney, the outside attorney is going to represent your interests, and there's an inherent conflict with having all these clients. And so what we need to make sure is that as the only other branch of government, that they represent us also. And if we simply have, by supermajority, the right to also fire them, the mayor can fire at will. If we also have that right, then it reminds the city attorney that, yes, they do represent us.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak seconded, and ready for the vote. Those that want to support. We have three. We have Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods.
Okay, the next one
Thank
is,
you.
5.01A again, and this just happened yesterday. What happens to the city attorney when they have conflicts of interest? Yesterday, a representative of the city attorney's office was representing TPD in a discussion about today's meeting, but there was no one from the city's attorney's office representing the position of city council. It's not only the responsibility of the city council attorney, I just read that it's also the responsibility of the city attorney. But when a representative city attorney is representing one of their clients, they need to disclose which client they're representing, and then there also should be a representative representing the other clients of city council. So I would make a motion that city attorney's outside attorney review and potentially edit the following to present at the first hearing, and it would be amendment to section 5.01A, quote, should the city attorney face a situation that creates a conflict of interest in representing the city attorney's clients, the city attorney will offer each party outside counsel to provide an objective opinion.
Do you have that again as a hard copy? Thank you.
Sorry, let me grab one. Marty, you want to?
Second.
If that doesn't have a second, I'll move to the next one.
I just want to read it. I'll second. This is a great idea.
What this really says is that both sides need to be represented by objective counsel. And what happens in real life, I've talked to a lot of attorneys about this, if an attorney has a conflict of interest, they say, I can't help you, you've got to go to another counsel. So what does the city council do? If the mayor and the city council have a dispute, or the city mayor and a department head, or the city council department head, or whatever, Florida bar rules would say that attorney cannot represent both sides. They have to get outside counsel. But it's not stated in the charter, and so this simply states what should happen, typically following Florida bar rules.
And to clarify, you're seeing this go at the end of
Section 5.01A.
A. Mr. Miranda?
Again,
Yes.
I'm not, what we're doing is, whoever the city attorney is, the way I read this thing, maybe I'm not reading it right, should the city reach conflict of representation, that means that if two bodies come before that city attorney, whoever that city attorney is, whoever the bodies are, not us, the mayor and the council, they have a disagreement, they come to the city attorney. And what they're saying here is that attorney, city attorney, cannot make a determination, and if that other party can get outside counsel. What are we doing here? How many outside counsel we're going to have? That's the responsibility on the charter by the city attorney to be the head of both bodies, both the legislative and the administration. That's all I got to say.
So let me check back with Mr. Carlson. Is that what your intention was?
Yeah, I gave the example in the rest of the world. If an attorney has a conflict, they can't handle the case. If there's a dispute between the mayor and city council or whatever, the city attorney is conflicted out. The city attorney is not the judicial branch of government, even though we didn't approve that amendment, it's still not the judicial branch of the government. And their opinion it could be biased. We've seen so many cases of bias in the last few years that we need to make sure that we get outside opinions. And this is to avoid conflict, not to create conflict. There already is conflict, not created by us, but created by those biased opinions that take away. What they've done is, without changing the charter, without going before the public and getting a vote, they've changed the charter to take away powers from city council. Thank
you for the clarification. Mr. Goods? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. We've been here for a while, and I've got several calls, because I wasn't going to come back, but I had some people who said, no, you need to come back, because that's your job. And I said, you're right. This is a total mockery today. It truly is. We have seen a lot of things that have happened over the last going on 4 years that we know some things are wrong. Whether certain council members want to try to make a change or not for whatever reason, and that's fine. I'm reminded by Mr. Miranda said you can't get mad about people's votes, and he's right.
Yeah.
You can't. So for me to the public is that I'm going to do my duty as you elected me to do, regardless of what the outcome is today, which we're not gonna have any outcomes. We're gonna go through this whole thing and waste the whole day, because there's not gonna be any votes to go through today. And that's fine. But I would say you can't serve two masters, and I've said that time and time again. I can't employ you, ma'am, and you be loyal to somebody else. You can't be loyal to nobody else. If I hire you, you got to be loyal to me. You can't be loyal. I don't care what the charter says. If I hire you, you better be loyal to me, or I'm going to fire you if you ain't loyal to me. I don't care what anybody says. The city attorney's office, the city attorney, not the city attorney's office, but the city attorney should be bounded here. And if the mayor wants her attorney staff, then fine. City council has their staff. And at the ultimate end, if there's a dispute, now you have a city attorney who is unbiased to make a decision. Should not be answering to the mayor or the council, but have an independent body, an independent person. And if the mayor has her own council staff, this council, just like the mayor has her own communication staff that put out all kind of stuff about council members, but we don't have a communication staff to counter, rebut anything. So I'm just looking at the city attorney's office. To me, should not be a department per se, but the city attorney should be a standalone person. That's my opinion. And again, you can't serve two masters. I don't care what anybody says, because if I hired you or appointed you, if you don't do what I say do, I'm going to fire you. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification. Mr. Vieira, you also had a comment.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. You know, and again, this is something that we're seeing on first impression. My big challenge with a lot of the issues that we're seeing today for largely the first time, aside from some general discussions, is that we're being asked to go forward on a formal process on weighty issues in our charter that will have some effect. You know, and certain of these issues, you know, I'd like to further discuss, right, if we had more time. And again, not to relitigate issues, but I go back to a month ago. My challenge with this is, again, just looking at it from the language that I see, is this could create potentially a burden where we create conflicts where there are not those traditional attorney-client conflicts that we see. In my opinion, to the extent that a council member may feel that they need a counsel in there with them, we have this fine gentleman here who can fulfill that task. That's my opinion. Again, upon first impression, I just wanted to state my rationale to give the process the respect that it deserves. Thank you.
And I think, Mr. Vieira, that's one reason this is called a workshop.
Sure. May I respond?
That there are discussion points and not necessarily a final decision. If it does happen, it does happen, and we get a vote. It's a workshop. Thank you. Ms. Hertog, let me go to Ms. Hertog real quickly. She had her hand out.
And that's actually, that's kind of the point of today for me, is exactly the opposite of what you said. And it's just, hey, folks, we're not allowed to talk at any other time to each other. So that's what this workshop was about. This would give us a full month to come back with language. It would have 2 full votes. So the public could weigh in at that point or earlier, because you know they will. After today, each one of us will get phone calls about our performance today. Sure. And so you know that'll happen. So anything we pass, we also may come back and decide, nah, never mind. So for me, this is actually an exercise of, hey, this is really interesting. I'd like to explore it further. And it winnows down everyone's giant ideas to some more specific ones that I think we should all focus on. So I completely disagree. While I would love to go in depth about more of these, to me, this is really just a, hey, this is one that kind of piques all of our interest. We'd like to talk about it more. We want council to come back with some things. So that is actually what I think the purpose of this workshop today is, and why I've supported so many different measures is because I'm really cool with them coming back for us to actually focus on a few specific ones to bring back. I don't think any ideas today have been bad ideas. So.
Thank you. And Mr. Vieira, you wanted to add a
yes,
footnote?
I mean, just again, very, not to relitigate the issue, but again, I wish that we could have had additional time a month ago to discuss these, because when I vote yes on something, I don't like to vote no on it later. I just don't. I like to give it time, thought, consideration. It's just the way I function, but that's it. But again, I appreciate Councilwoman Hertag's words and her hard work. Thank you.
And as we conclude, when that time comes, is looking at next steps and a timeline. So we'll have the opportunity to look at that process, and is there anything else you want to fold into it before we end, to fully understand your comment and Ms. Hurtak's. Yes, Mr. Carlson?
Yeah, I would just ask my colleagues who vote against these, if you think about them and discuss them with whoever your advisors are, and you decide you want to bring them back, we can still bring them back, I think. Bring it up in new business and say, hey, I reflected on some of these and I think differently. I think, we're giving, the purpose of this is to give the public the right to decide. And if we don't approve some of these tweaks, we're going to end up in a situation where we continue to have conflicts and these issues will continue to fester. And I should say, some folks were asking me at lunch, like, are you really going to go through the rest of these and get a vote? No. Yes, I don't care. To me, this is not about politics. It's not about being able to tweet at the end of the day, I won or lost or whatever, which I'm sure some people are going to do. This is about bringing up the issues that are important to the city, and constituents want me to bring that. They have lots of concerns about the way the city is being run and the way that we city council members have been treated by city attorney's office. Now we've got Ms. Zellman, who's new, and I'm not putting that on her, but we've got to make sure that at the very least, even though these may not pass, the message is out there, and it's not, I didn't make these up. They're coming from the public also, and coming from good legal counsel, and we need to seriously think about the underlying issues here. So I would just ask respectfully for a vote up or down on that then.
Yes. Are you voting?
No,
Yes?
I just want to say one thing.
All right.
Since we're bringing up some other stuff, I have never talked to Mr. City Council Attorney, Mr. Shelby, or the city attorney on any issue regarding this. None of them. I haven't talked to any one of these colleagues here to clear the air that it's like, the way it was said, it was like preconceived that the vote's always going to be 4-3 or 3-4 or 5-2 or 2-5 or whatever the number is. So let me clear the air right there. And if anybody wants to question that, we can do that anytime you want.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to call for the vote, and could you read out the motion one more time?
The city attorney's outside attorney review and edit the following. Should the city attorney face a situation that creates a conflict of interest in representing the city attorney's clients, the city attorney will offer each party outside counsel to provide an objective opinion.
And I believe we had a second as well, so let's go for the vote. We have three. We have Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods.
Okay, next one.
Thank you.
Next one.
Could I intervene for one moment? If we could put back up our desired outcomes, if we could find that slide, because I think it really is underscoring what some of you are saying. If you'll notice what this says, it uses very specific language. Did that come up on your screen? To explore, discuss, and develop. Explore is a great deal of what you're doing in this workshop. Just wanted to underscore that. Thank you.
I've got
Go
three more
ahead.
quick ones in this area. Next one is again, I got to pass it down. To modify section 5.01A, and it is, quote, the city attorney's office may not participate in an investigation of a client, and then in parentheses, the mayor or city council, city council member, department heads, et cetera, as defined in the charter, without first informing that client of the investigation and the nature of the investigation. And I'm not bringing up a specific case, but if an attorney is representing you, and it's clear from the charter that the city attorney's office represents city council and also city council members, it's specifically described there. The city attorney, by Florida bar rules, should not be allowed to investigate its own client without at least first disclosing that to the client. And that's basic information. So the only option there is to either file a lawsuit or go to the Florida bar and make a complaint. And so I'd like to avoid that by just specifying this here.
Second.
We have a second with Ms. Hurtak. Some discussion on this topic.
I
Yes,
just,
Mr. Miranda.
I just read it now for the first time, and I just got to digest it a little second here. I don't, if the city attorney's office would not be to invest a client, the way I read this, if there is an allegation against me, let's say, And I don't see how the city attorney can start an investigation or the nature of investigation without letting me know about it. The city attorney doesn't make investigations. A law enforcement officer makes an investigation, or a city attorney makes investigations. Not one of her, unless it's, you commit a crime outside and they catch you for it, whether it's me or anyone else, then the police department gets involved. So I don't understand the whole text of it, but I don't want to go into the past or the future. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't want to speak on it, but I think the city attorney is not responsible for what you do, meaning me. That city attorney is either going to tell me my rights, what I have to do, if I want to be represented by that city attorney. If I feel that I'm under investigation and I have a conference with that city attorney is going to tell me by law what my rights are if they want me to have that city attorney represent me. That's what I think it's about, but I'm not sure. So therefore, I can't vote for it because I don't know that too many investigations, too many clients. I don't know what's happening with the text of the conversation between that individual who might be charged or not charged with a city attorney. I don't know that.
So is your key word here dealing with the semantics of investigation?
Correct.
Somebody want to comment on that, your understanding, your thought? Yes, Mr. Maniscalco.
You know, in thinking about this, I'm trying to gather my thoughts, and, you know, I know why a lot of these items, you know, where they stem from, and a mismanagement and a mishandling. We're here today because of recent things that have happened in the past year, and here we are discussing the charter. You know, we had a charter review commission 4 years ago at length with many members, many that are here, many that are with the city. And again, you know, I started my comments this morning with, it feels like we've been at war with one another. And we've talked about hard reset. We've talked about a lot of things over the last few months. We have a new city attorney. But you know, I've been involved in politics for 12 years. I got elected in 2015. I've run 3 campaigns. No one ever brought up the charter. No one discussed a lot of things that have been discussed because the main objective and goal was to serve the community and get elected here. I appreciate, you know, this today, but to me it's a mess, you know, and I don't know. We need to look within ourselves. I don't know what to do that we get along better. I mean, because I understand where a lot of this comes from, and this could be avoided. All we should do is follow the charter. There's a lot of stuff here that it already says, but there's a lot of different opinions over the years that have muddied the waters, and you know, we need to go down a different path. So.
And this is as neutral a comment as I can make, is that's why we have the Supreme Court, because of interpretations. So it is certainly an issue of how different people interpret. That's the point of this discussion. Actually, Mr. Vieira and then Mr. Carlson.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And again, this is something that could have some positive results. My concern with it, among other things, is and again, just hypothetically, this could lead to potential retaliation against somebody that makes a complaint, et cetera. Again, unintended consequences of going forward with something. That's my concern with this.
Okay, right, because everyone has been very cordial in listening to one another. Mr. Carlson and then Mr. Goods.
Yeah, retaliation's against law, and I think it's against the handbook, so we can't do that anyway. But I will say to Councilmember Maniscalco's question, the issue of making peace is not on our side. Chief Bennett will tell you how many times I've called him and asked to make peace with the administration, where after the administration has overtly attacked me and my colleagues, I've said, let's make peace. I met with the mayor in February and tried to make peace. That was one of the things that Chief Bennett and I worked out. I've called when we continue to be attacked and we continue to get biased opinions from city attorney, I've asked publicly for the mayor to come apologize to city council for using city resource to attack us, and nothing has happened. I've asked the chief of staff to have the mayor call me to talk about these attacks. I'm not the one that attacked. The attacks were the other way around. And I've been calling over and over again for peace. I've had several conversations with Ms. Zellman. I had conversations with her predecessor to try to make sure that we got fair and accurate responses. So far, I have not filed a lawsuit. I have not filed a bar complaint against anyone, although I am completely entitled to do both, and at least one of my other colleagues is. We haven't done that because it's not in the best interest of the city. But it's not, don't blame it on city council or city council members. This is not on us. The reason why this is happening is because we've got an administration that thinks it can just get whatever it wants from city council, and that's what's going to happen today. And they're going to tweet tonight, oh, high five, look at it, we put them in their place. The people are going to lose today are the public, because, you know, why is it that we didn't find out about this, the civil rights investigation by the Justice Department for 6 months? Why is it that we couldn't get answers as to who made the decision not to put a $108 million contract out to bid? Why is it that we couldn't get simple answers last week to incinerate plant? How much is it going to cost for 10 years? We don't know. How much is it going to cost for 30 years? We don't know. That's ridiculous that we don't know these things. And part of the reason why we can't get the answers is because we don't have any legal support. So I would just, I don't want to go into the specifics of what's behind this, but obviously, if the city attorney has a conflict of interest, which they do because they represent multiple clients, you can't, and your own attorney cannot investigate you or persecute you. I've had this former city attorney say things to me that were slanderous to the media, completely not based in law and should not have been said. And what I'm trying to do is avoid a conflict by making sure that we make it very clear that they can't work against us. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, the key words here is first informing that client, if I'm going to pick out the piece about this. Any other, we have a motion? Yes, Mr. Goods, thank you.
The gist of this whole charter is oversight. There is no oversight. That's why you have these issues. If you had an inspector general of the city, that person could clear up a lot of this stuff. The ambiguities, the interpretations, and I think that's what's needed. Someone who's watching the house. And I think an inspector general would be a person who would be able to monitor this charter when we go on astray and be able to monitor some of the things that we're doing. I think that you look at some other counties that have an inspector general, that do the exact things that I'm talking about. And you can get away from a lot of this stuff, because there are some small words in here that can be redefined by someone whose interpretation. A lot of them are. You know, when we get to 603, I believe it is, when we talk about appointments, there's a lot of mess in that needs to be cleaned up. And if council members aren't aware of that, we had a situation that we all were lost and baffled about. So when we get to that discussion, I really want to hear some people talking then, because, you know, there was a whole community that was in an uproar about some stuff. So we have silence then, and we know something's in the fix here. But I would just say maybe council need to look at, in their minds, maybe an inspector general would be good to be able to monitor and deal with our charter issues. And we talk about investigations and ethics and all kind of stuff, but I think an inspector general would be good.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Ms. Hurtak? We're going to vote
Yes.
on this, please, about first informing the individual about the investigation. We have 3 votes, Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. Thank
Okay,
you.
2 more in this section real fast. The next one is, again, an addition of 5.01A. And this has to do with the memo that Ms. Zellman sent out last week, that is a reiteration of a memo by a former city attorney from 5 or so years ago, where that city attorney had the opinion that the city attorney's office solely has the right to not only negotiate settlements, but also sign the contracts and pay them without city council approval. I'm completely fine if we want to give them the right by ordinance to do that. However, considering that there is an opinion by a city attorney that is wrong, and I'll pass this out too, since there's an opinion by a city attorney from 2018 that is wrong, we need to put this in the charter so that we don't get a wrong opinion again. I mean, this opinion in 2 paragraphs changed the charter. The charter does not in any way say that the city attorney can take away the right of city council to approve contracts and payments. We can delegate that to the city attorney, but they don't have the right by charter. And so what I would suggest, again, that the city attorney, outside attorney, look at this and edit it with a proposal back on the first date that we meet, amendment to section 5.01A, which would say, quote, "None of the above should be construed to take away city council's right by charter to approve contracts and expenditures as defined in sections 7.02 and 8.01.
Ms. Hurtak?
I'm going to second this, and I'm going to say that of all of them, this is the one that we've heard from about citizens the most. When it comes to the Hannah Avenue project, we've heard from countless people that that this is, oh no, this is the settlement, but just, yeah, well, we've also had settlements for large amounts of money that happened to this very council not that long ago. That should have come before us. Anything with 6 digits should not be just the purview of the administration.
Yes, Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, ma'am. And you know, it's funny, this is something which we could take a look at with ordinance on a larger workshop where we take several hours to talk about this one sole issue, because there's a lot of gray there with approving of settlements, et cetera. I remember when I first got on council, we used to approve settlements, and suddenly it never happened again, right? Just, and I went, hey, what happened to that? But the challenge is, with the kind of settlements that are out there, to, you know, maybe we could take a look at something on approving settlements, either dealing with council members or settlements dealing with ordinances that were passed by city council. If we do a one-size-fits-all approval, which again would probably require, and I'd be glad to second, by the way, a workshop on this issue, but if we do a one-size-fits-all charter provision, potentially for settlements, everything from sidewalk slip and falls to commercial vehicles, pedestrians, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how many settlements this city deals with. There's a lot that goes into approving a settlement. The veracity or the credibility of a witness, things that may occur on the part of a particular party that one party knows about that doesn't want the adverse party to know about, and it could potentially come out in public in a hearing to approve that very settlement, which is predicated upon confidential information. So there's a lot of gray there that by going here, we would potentially not do a good service to the city, but we should do, and I would strongly support a workshop for maybe a more narrowly tailored policy on this issue through ordinance on things dealing with ordinances that the city council passes, things directly with council members. That's very, very reasonable. But again, there is so much that goes into settling a case, right, that could go out in public and then undermine the settlement of that particular case. And there's a lot of potential for that, trust me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hurtak.
With all respect, you're in luck, because that's on our agenda on Thursday.
Well, there you go. That's good.
But to bring that back, you actually make a really good point that I didn't realize, that these used to come in front of us and just stopped. So if they already came in front of us and were already a problem, or weren't a problem rather, then why did they stop coming in front of us? And so to me, that seems more of the issue of, hey, it was okay until the attorney said it's not okay, and just made a unanimous motion and just took away our power. And I'm not cool with power being taken away, especially if it's something that used to come pretty regularly in front of us.
Thank you. Mr. Miranda and then Mr. Goods.
Thank you very much. I think there's the whole conversation here bases on 2 words in this memo that was sent back in August 16, 2018. And it's just the 2 words that I just picked out, and it's called legal matters. Not all settlements, but legal matters. In other words, if there's a lawsuit going on and whoever the city attorney is makes a judgment decision that it's fine to pay that amount now or pay more later, that's a decision that somebody's going to have to make. I am not qualified to go into a legal matter and understand what that person has of years of experience in handling these types of operations in the courtroom to find out who is right and who is wrong. I am not an attorney. I don't practice law. But when I read legal matters, that tells me that that person, whoever that person may be, in this council or upstairs that makes that decision. That's up to that person. In this case, it's a city attorney who makes that decision. Should I pay this amount or should I wait, go to trial and whatever? Those are legal matters. And I don't think maybe Mr. Vieira, who's an attorney on this side of the aisle, elected officials can make that decision. I don't feel comfortable making it with anybody else unless it's somebody in the legal department that makes that decision that it's a legal matter, and based on that experience of that person, that's why it's done. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. I'm saying I'd rather not come here because none of us are attorneys.
Thank you for pinpointing the specifics. Yes, Mr.
Well, let me
Goods?
tell you who does it. Let me tell you who does it right. You know, before I was removed in my position over on the Sports Authority, let me tell
I'm
you how
sorry,
they do it.
removed, I missed that,
From the
first
Sports
sentence.
Authority. I sat on the Sports Authority board. When we have legal matters, see, we go into a closed session, and the attorney discusses the legal matter. And they discuss the settlements. They discuss those issues. So you're informed so you can make a decision if you want to pay that. They give you options. So there's a way to do things, and I can tell you the Sports Authority does it right over there because they go into session and they look at what the attorney comes back, tell them what our options are, and so forth. And in that way, the attorney knows how to take the lead from the board. You know, and I've read a lot of documents that we talk about settlements and things like that. And I think, Mr. Shelby, I think you probably can elaborate on it because actually, I believe every quarter, HR is supposed to bring the list of settlements back, if I'm not mistaken, right? Right. Supposed to bring that back to tell us what was settled. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that ever. So I think when you talk about, again, we talk about these issues in charter, but generally when you look at it, there are some discrepancies here, and I know some don't want to deal with it today, and that's fine, but eventually someday it will have to be dealt with, even if it's 10 years down the road, which I'm now as I sat on that board and I review back, 10 years is too long. It should have been 5 like the county. Should have been 5 because there are issues here, and maybe this board may and eventually make a motion to change and reverse that to 5 years because we don't want, we got an election year coming up. Nobody wants to rock the boat. I get it. I'm not a politic guy. I don't care about being reelected. I just care about doing my work right now for the people. And they giving me their marching orders. And I'm gonna stand strong as a soldier, do what I'm supposed to do right now, and I'll deal with the rest later, the consequences later. But I think we need to look at what we're not doing because there's a lot of things that we are not doing with legal matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Carlson?
I'm going to read this, and I'm going to leave out a few words, but the city attorney has the final authority to settle any legal matters that involve the city of Tampa. This includes the authority to settle all claims and litigations involving the city of Tampa. As such, it is not necessary to submit the settlement of any legal claim to the city council of the city of Tampa for approval. Any resolutions, executive orders, or ordinances in conflict with section 5.01 of the city charter and city of Tampa are thus null and void and unenforceable. This is not from the charter. This is from a 2-paragraph opinion by a city attorney in 2018. Councilmember Vieira mentioned that the city council was presented settlements before and suddenly they disappeared. And I don't even know, I wasn't here then, I don't know if city council was informed. But a city attorney made a decision that changed the charter and the voters didn't vote on this. If you look at 7.02 and 8.01, clearly in the charter, city council has the ability to approve contracts and expenditures. Now, to Councilmember Vieira's point, we can delegate that. And we might decide to delegate that on Thursday. But what happens when we decide to delegate on Thursday? If we propose an ordinance on Thursday where we say we would like to delegate settlements below a certain dollar amount or of a certain type, is the city attorney going to stand up and say, well, former city attorney in 2018 said this, and his opinion is like the Supreme Court, and so we're going to listen to that and we don't care what you think? That's what has happened in the past. And so without having a longer discussion, I would ask the city attorney to please understand, the new city attorney to understand that she represents city council. She said in her memo that she's open to us passing an ordinance. If she allows us to pass an ordinance, that means that this opinion is null and void, and that will be my goal on Thursday. But because of that, I would like to put this in the charter to make sure no city attorney ever does this again. We're not changing anything. We already have the power. We're just clarifying that we have the power, and then we can delegate it. We're not saying that all settlements should come to us. We can change that by ordinance. All we're doing is reiterating that already by 7.02 and 8.01, we already have the power, but we've been usurped by this 2018 2-paragraph opinion that did not go before voters. Thank you. Should we take a vote?
Yes, so basically what you've just submitted here is clarification language.
Yes, it just
Where it says-
reinforces what already is true,
Yes.
but so that we don't get a biased opinion like this one in 2018.
Yes.
May I not
You want to call for a
belabor
vote?
the matter
Mr.
anymore?
Miranda, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm not opposed to something being changed, but but I don't think that we don't know the facts, we don't know what number we're gonna put, it's gonna be $5 or 5,000 or 20,000 or 100,000, we haven't decided that. So I think that Mr. Vieira had a good point, we have a workshop on that, I'm not opposed to that, I'm not opposed to making this change. What I'm opposed to is we don't know the what-ifs of it. What if what? We don't know what the city attorney's gonna tell us. We don't know the amount that they're gonna settle on, or we're gonna settle with them. I'm certainly, they're not gonna tell us every time we got one for $100. No, that's not gonna happen. But we have to have some understanding of the facts. That's all I'm saying right now. I'm not opposed to it, but I can't vote on it because I don't know all the facts.
So to clarify, you're asking for some parameters to be set
Correct.
in order for this to feel like you could
Correct.
vote one way or the other. So as it stands, yes, Mr. Briera?
Thank you. Yeah, cart before the horse, so to speak, which is, this is something which maybe after Thursday, once we define the perimeters potentially through an ordinance, I could be supportive of if it's necessary, but cart before horse, my opinion. But that's it. 12 seconds up. Thank you.
Good clarification. Calling for a vote as it stands. We have three. We have Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. So it does not pass as stated.
My last one in this section, I know this one will go down in flames quickly, but Miami has an attorney for the mayor, and if we're going to demand rights, we just rejected all of them. But by the way, anything that was just rejected, it's already in the charter. These things already exist. We're not changing city council authority. All we're doing is protecting them so that a future city attorney can't come up with an opinion like this. But I would make a motion to modify 5.01A. Let me pass this out to say that add additional paragraph that says that the mayor may appoint an attorney to represent the mayor's office. This attorney would be duly licensed with a Florida bar and would advise the mayor in his role as mayor and not as an individual. The mayor's attorney would provide legal opinions to the mayor based on the attorney's interpretation of the law. However, no action or opinion of the mayor's attorney shall be construed to be the official legal position of the city, and such official legal position and actions shall be solely within the scope and powers and duties of the city attorney. So all this really does is, just like city council has an attorney, the mayor would have an attorney. And it further, this is a new position, this would be a change. And the purpose of it is so that the public and the city attorney's office would not misconstrue who their client is. Their client is not only the mayor, which they've in effect represented in the past. Their client is all the clients that are listed in the charter. And so that by having a mayor's attorney, the mayor could get advice, and not representing the mayor individually, but in the office. And then the city attorney's office could be more objective because city council already has its attorney as well.
Second.
Just to clarify, you said this would be a new position. Did I hear that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it would further help to create objectivity of the city attorney's office.
We had a second with Ms. Hurtak. You want to take a vote on this to pass it as it is? We have three, Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods.
And that's all I have in that section. Thank you.
Thank you. Article 6, Section 6 starts with officers and goes through, again, I'm looking at Supplement 135. It goes up to 608, which is changes. If anyone has discussion point on any of those sections, please raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Goods.
603,
603, appointment,
yes, ma'am.
yes.
Mr. Shelby, he didn't, I submitted something to him, he didn't add it on the sheet of paper as it relates to remittance of the nominee. But I think for all intents and purposes, if you look at the example of corrective language, the change shall appoint to shall nominate. allow for interim appointment until confirmation of the nominee by the city council, which shall be a period of 90 days, which may be extended in additional 90 days, and shall be filled only by a person who is an existing employee of the city. But, and also in the ending of that, which we wouldn't add it, that person, if the nominee is stricken down by this council, cannot be resubmitted.
Thank you. And so you are primarily focusing on the word appoint and change that to nominate.
Nominate.
Do I hear you correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Second.
Yes, other
And I have
discussion?
a question on the motion.
Yes.
Did you say that the nomination has to be from within an existing employee of the city?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just,
Yes,
Mr.
if I
Shelby?
can. I'm looking at the memo. I believe that was
Interim.
you
Intern.
had talked about an
If
interim
if it's an
appointment.
open position and they have to select somebody, the interim person has to be from the city, already a city employee. And then they could nominate whoever they want after that point to bring for a selection. But to take somebody and then put them in a position, they need to be nominated first and approved by this body. But if you have a vacancy, a city employee can fill that void because they know city policy, city business already, and can function until the appointment is made.
Yes, Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, ma'am. And you know what? This is one that makes sense, save for, and I don't want to say like this part makes no sense. In other words, that I would find some problematic issues with the idea that if council turns it down, then saying the mayor may not appoint him or her again. Maybe that precludes a little too much on the part of the executive. But on other issues, the risk, and mind you, this has nothing to do with any past experiences. I voted for Chief O'Connor, and I know she's doing a wonderful job, et cetera, and I support her. But when you have the potential of appointing somebody and then they're on the job within longer than that 15 days, in other words, kind of tightening up, that's something that could make some sense to this guy. That's all.
So, Mr. Vieira, you're also looking at the time frame that's involved as well as the two words, appoint versus,
I don't think that's
nominate versus appoint. Mr.
I
Goods?
don't think there's an issue. If that person, you still, the person, if the vacancy is open and a city employee who's already currently here is filling that void, that person, if the mayor, he or she says, that's my person and my guy, they still go up for the appointment. So I don't understand what you're saying, because again, they're going for the appointment. If they're denied by the council, they're denied. But I'm saying if a person is a voided position, and I say, Ms. Hurte, you're gonna be my interim right now, you're the employee, you know the city business, until I decide if you want this job, you apply, just like anybody else, and then I take my list, and then I look at my list, and you may not be that person, I chose somebody else, you go before the council for appointment. And if the council denies you, that's it.
I can only speak for myself.
Mr. Miranda, yes.
Thank you very much. If a mayor, whoever that mayor may be, chooses someone to be head of something, then, as I understand it, after the mayor's here 15 days, within that 15 days, you got to turn it into the council, and then the council's got to appoint all the department heads. That's the way I think it works to some degree. And then that person should be, we're talking about residency included, or just the person?
Just the person.
Person, your resident is something else.
And I think that mayor, whoever he or she is, has the right to appoint somebody. And then if the council, the slate is given, and you vote individually on them, if you want to vote on the whole slate, you can. But I don't see where then, what's the problem?
Thank you. Other comments on that? Do we have a motion
Yeah.
for the change? Yes,
For the
Mr.
change.
Goods?
To use the word from appoint to a nominate. And if the interim person has to be the interim person within, and then again, has to be an existing employee. If the mayor wants to take that person later on, that's fine, they come before the board for appointment. No difference if, you still have to apply for the job.
It's number 8 if you have the
Yes.
suggestions from Mr. Shelby.
Yes, it is. If you have that memo, it's number 8.
I just wanted to try to help the
Thank you.
secretary.
Yes.
And with regard to number 8, Mr. Goods, you had an issue with an omission in that because you wanted to say something about, and I don't know if that was part of your motion or to take that out, about resubmitting.
Right. But you're not gonna resubmit 10 times. It doesn't make any sense, you know? So I think when you go through, council votes it down, it's done. Mayor has to look for another candidate.
Taking out the words or resubmit?
Yep.
So can we clarify for the note taker, the motion with the wording, and then we'll see if we have a second?
I second it.
Mr. Goods, did you want to restate your motion with the words that I heard Mr. Shelby mention?
I think Ms. Hurtak did. Did you not restate it?
Yeah, I can give you that language.
Yes.
Yeah, the interim person, I mean, I see what you're typing. The interim person has to be, an existing employee. And, down at the bottom, it's the second sentence from the end, second to the last sentence, I suppose. It says, the mayor within 90 days thereafter shall submit or resubmit to the council the name of the appointee. Councilmember Goods wants to take out the words or resubmit to make a person only have one option, one bite at the apple, as so to speak. Did I get that correct?
You're correct. And the word appoint till nominate.
Yes, but she's got
Okay,
that part.
all right.
Do we have a second? Mr. Carlson? Yes. Let's call for a vote on this. We have 3. We have Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. It does not pass at this point.
I have another one. This could either go, I'm gonna, my memo says 7.03, but I'm gonna suggest it under 6.06.
6.06,
Yes,
salaries,
yes.
okay.
I think that city council should never have to vote on its salary again. I know Councilman Vieira is concerned about when a salary raise would take place, but we should never have to vote on a salary again. Also, although the mayor is the executive, we also, city council is in charge of looking through, we all individually, because there's 7 of us, it doesn't mean we have to do any less work. We all individually have to look through all the same documents and read 1,000 pages a week or whatever it is, and closely watch the budget. And so I agree that we shouldn't get what the mayor gets, but we should be able to get some smaller percentage of it. And so I would make a motion to ask the city attorney's outside counsel to look at section 6.06 and review the following language for proposal to city council at the first date of hearing. And my proposed language is, quote, once every 5 years, city staff and/or an outside consultant will conduct an analysis of the salaries of mayors of the 5 largest cities in Florida and/or American cities of a similar size to recommend the new salary of the mayor. This new salary of the mayor must be approved by city council and the mayor. City council salaries will then be set at 60% of the mayor's salary. These salaries will be eligible for annual cost of living increases. If we pass this, you might not agree with the percentage. I think we're worth at least 60% because we do a lot of the same work. But if we're not, pick another number. But even Morris Massey recommended that we bring this up in this session a few weeks ago. My particular solution is that the best kind of benchmarking is to look at what other mayors are making. I think our mayor's paid too little, not the person, but this position. But if we look at the 5 largest cities and we look at cities of a similar size and we find that the salary's correct or should be higher or lower, then we can come back and say, okay, this is what it will be. And then city council is just set up as a percentage of that, and we never have to vote on our salary again.
Thank you. If I might, just a procedural question. It's now 2:30, and checking on what is your sense for how long you want this meeting to continue? Council Chairman Citro?
Well, for as long as it takes to get through the charters. Well, I was hoping we would be further along than we are right now. What is the pleasure of council?
I can only speak for myself. I have to be at a place at 3:15 to take a scan, and I cannot miss it. So if going to the questions on the floor or the discussion, 60% of 180 is $108,000. So the mayor's gonna go up to 200, council members are gonna make 120,000. The three largest cities around us, which is Orlando, Miami, and St. Petersburg, I think, we're about $1,000 difference in salary today to one of the cities. One's at 54, one's at 58, one's at 60. So those are my memories. I'm going by mine, so don't take my mind, because both people get, when the sun hits, you get a little radiation, you get the cells working real good. But in cold weather, you can't think. So what I'm saying is that my mind is right, that's what the salaries come to.
Thank you. We'll come back to the procedural question. Yes, Ms. Hurtak.
I'm going to second that about Councilmember Carlson's. And for me, I think this is such a beautiful amendment to the Constitution, because everyone here who's saying, oh, we're paid too much or not, you know, we're in equal amount, this actually puts that decision in the hands of the voters, takes it out of our hands. And I think that that's exactly for the folks who are saying we don't need an increase. We have people who say we do. We have people who say we don't. And this literally just puts it in the hands of the voters. I think that's a great idea. I'm open to changing the percentage, but I think it's pretty much exactly what we need to do. And as far as the procedural rule, I can stay here all night.
Thank you. So she gave clarification that the percent may be modified, but the overall language is appropriate. Mr. Maniscalco?
Thank you very much. As I've stated recently, I didn't come here for the money. I came here to serve. The people allowed me to come here and given me this honor to serve. And I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Some days are easier than others, but at the end of the day, it's a community service. Yes, we get paid, but I don't believe in supporting a salary increase. Just like my wife, she's a teacher. She comes so stressed every day. She complains a lot. She works very hard, and teachers don't get paid enough money. But it's not about the money. She loves what she does. So she leaves it at that and faces a new day. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Citro?
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator. I think that the job needs to be defined on whether or not it's a part-time job or a full-time job. I don't know of too many people that are out there that are making $97,000 working a part-time job. I will be here at 8 o'clock in the morning. I will stay here until midnight, which I have. Some of us have. But to set that high of a pay scale for a part-time job, I cannot vote for that.
I saw 3 hands, but I think you won, Mr. Miranda.
I had my hand up a while.
I'm certainly not opposed to raises. However, there was one suggested this not too far ago that would have been a 42% raise. I just don't feel that was equitable to the public, to what they were going to get. Not that we don't work hard, we do. But there's a sensitivity of doing what you can to make the city better, not only by myself, but all the other 6 colleagues. And salary is one thing that's important. I'm not going to deny that. However, 42% is high. This, based on the formula, whether it's 60% or 40%, whatever it is, this represents about a 70% increase in salary. And I'm just quickly off my mind. So what I'm saying is, I don't mind whatever 4%, whatever the general employees get. We're no better than they are. They're the ones that are making the city go. We're making the city administration and legislation work. But those individuals that work for the city are the ones that make this city the place to live in. And I'm sorry, I got to leave in about 20 minutes to make their own time.
Thank you. Ms.
But I will
Hurtak
be
and then
back.
Mr.
Well,
Goods.
the beauty of this is I actually, because Mr. Goods had talked about, talking about this today. And so I went through the charter, and the great part about this, one moment, just stay here for a second. The great part about this is that nowhere in the charter does it say it's a full-time or a part-time job. So I think it's just an assumption that's always been there that it's been a part-time job, but nowhere in the charter does it say it's a part-time job. So I've taken that to meaning it's a full-time job. So, which is how I approach it. My actual second job is done on a part-time basis now. So I actually, again, I would really love to defer to the voters on this.
Thank you. Mr. Goods and then Mr.
Well,
Citro.
she took the thunder because I called.
sorry.
That's okay, because I called the supervisor election because I know years ago they used to put part-time, and I researched it, and it's not there. We went through the charter. There's nothing that says full-time or part-time. So I'm curious to know what the county language is, Hillsborough County, what their verbiage is, and, because I don't believe it's in theirs either. And we kind of looked, and I didn't see it on their website either through their charter. So I think a definition of that, well, or not. But I do think that, when you're doing a job, no matter if you're elected and you're here to support the voters, your district, but it also weighs on your family, and I'm glad that I'm retired. Some people aren't, and I have the luxury, but still, at times, there are financial difficulties. And you want, my constituents want me everywhere, and I am everywhere, all the time. So I haven't heard the voters in this city holler about not getting a pay increase or city council shouldn't be paid. We've heard the opposite. So I really kind of perplexed of this council here talking about we shouldn't get a pay raise. Everyone deserves a pay raise for their work. When you put in the work, you deserve to get paid. I don't care who you are. You can volunteer all day long, but when you volunteer, sometimes volunteers do get something. They get even if it's a pat on the back, they get something. They get something. So for me, I think it's a good idea to let the voters decide. I don't have a problem with that, But I just think that to say we shouldn't get a pay raise is asinine.
Thank you. Mr. Citro.
One last part of the apple, Mr. Facilitator. We all hear from different constituents. We may not all hear from the same constituents. Yes, I consider this a full-time job, but I would rather be at work more than one day a week. This council needs to work and meet more than one day a week. I still work 35 hours at my second job until we can define how many hours a week we put in, whether it be 35 or 75. It doesn't matter. I cannot accept this large of a pay increase at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson?
Yeah, I want to say, I put this in as a placeholder. If you think it's a part-time job, you can pick 10% of what the mayor makes. You can pick 20%. I just put that as a placeholder. I put 60% as a placeholder. That's what I would approve, because I think that I believe in good government, and the governments that I've studied around the world that are run really well, they pay a decent amount and they get good people. It's not fair. I don't need the salary. I could turn it down. I could turn down the increase, but it's not fair to everybody else not to do it at some point. We could change the percentage. We could also change it to start in 2027, so that it's possible none of us except maybe Mr. Miranda will be here. But
Excuse me, I may be alive.
but we can set it like that if you want. But what happened the last time we discussed this is that suddenly the media, instead of covering the substantive issues that they wrote a bunch of stories about the salary discussion. I imagine the administration pushed that story out. I'm going to withdraw this proposal and bring it back in new business on another day, because I don't want to put my colleagues at risk. We don't have the votes, and I don't want to put them at risk of having a negative editorial. They can write whatever they want about me. I don't care. Could I want to make another proposal to a different section before Mr. Miranda leaves, and I would have to jump the order. So I don't know if anybody else has another urgent one they want to discuss about before he leaves, but I would like to bring this one up.
Is that workable with the rest of you?
Sure.
Which section?
10.04.
Ethics.
There's no formula for what to do if a mayor has a conflict of interest. I've asked several different attorneys about this. There's very little case law, and there's very little official guidance from the Ethics Commission. I picked up bits and pieces of information about this, but we need to have a process. Right now, to be fair to this mayor or any other mayor, there's no process by which the mayor can recuse herself. And I think we need to provide that option so that she doesn't get criticized for something that she shouldn't get criticized for, or whoever the mayor is in the future. So here's what I would propose. Again, asking that the city attorney get their outside attorney to look at section 10.4 ethics and to review and recommend an ordinance based on the following language. Quote, should the mayor face an ethical conflict of interest as defined by Florida law or city rule or code, the mayor will A, disclose that conflict at the next available city council meeting, either in person or through a representative. B, notify staff in the affected department that the mayor may not participate in this item and will not pass judgment on the outcome. C, ask the city council chair to approve and sign any affected RFP awards, memos to city council or others. D, ask the city council chair to sign any contracts or payments to the organizations affected. Now, what this means is that if the mayor has a conflict of interest, the mayor, as it stands right now, really has no choice but to sign all these documents or to stand with the press conference. There's no way for a mayor to disclose a conflict of interest. We have to fill out a Form 8B and provide it in public. We have to read it, and we have to provide it in public to everyone around. And in case you all don't know, the mayor does have conflicts, and I'm going to hand out the conflict form the mayor filled out at the Port Authority board meeting on August 16th, 2022. It's not completely filled out, so we don't know the nature of the conflict, but there is a form here. And so if the mayor has a conflict in a Port Authority building, it is possible or likely that the mayor would have a conflict at the city, and there has to be a process for the mayor to handle it. What we're doing is trying to protect the mayor by creating a process by which the mayor can step aside and allow the city council chair, who would step in if in the old days, if the mayor was out of the city or if something happens to the mayor. And so this case, it just allows the mayor to have arm's length so the mayor is not unfairly accused of anything. Marty, here's this was the Form 8B that the mayor handed out at Port Authority board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Would you like a moment to look at that?
Again, in this specific example, we don't know the details and we don't know the nature of the conflict because it doesn't say it on the form. But if you just presume that if the mayor filed a Form 8B in another body, there's a likelihood that there will be a conflict. And we just need a process to handle this.
Discussion?
It doesn't have a second yet, so if it doesn't get a second, we can drop it.
I'll
I thought we
second.
did. Thank you, Ms. Hurtak. Discussion,
I
Mr.
can follow it
Miranda?
to some degree. I just don't know what the city council chair, what part is that individual, whoever he or she may be, that has to be brought up to speed on something that that person may not know unless the mayor, at the end of the day, that means that the city council chair may have to sign both as city council chair and as acting mayor, because the mayor can't sign it then. When you pass a resolution or something in this body, it goes to the mayor's desk. And the reason I say that, because I've been there and I know what happened. In fact, I got one resolution where I signed it as chair, the next day I signed it as acting mayor because Greco was out of town. So all those things happen. I don't know exactly how to grasp it, and that's what, I'm alerting myself to that. Does the mayors have conflict? I don't know, not. I know when I have one, I put exactly what happened, where it was and everything else on the trust that I manage. So it is what it is, that's all.
Good, thank you. Someone else comment? Yes, Mr. Vieira.
And this is, I guess, to legal, what presently happens now whenever, let's say that there's a conflict on a resolution or something of that nature, and it requires the mayor's signature, what presently happens now?
I apologize. I just want to be clear, there's voting conflicts and there are conflicts of interest. So it's not accurate to say that no conflicts rules govern the mayor's activities here at the city. because certainly the city ethics code, the state ethics code, has numerous conflict provisions that govern the mayor's behavior. The port form that you're talking about had to do with her, it was a voting conflict issue, which I happen to know about only because Charles Klug contacted me and we went through it, and frankly, it was a misunderstanding. The mayor didn't want to vote to avoid an appearance of a conflict, but she didn't have an actual conflict, which was why she didn't complete the form. Charles Klug had started it for her, she signed it, and then when it got to the part where she had to identify the conflict, she didn't have one. So, but in any event, that dealt with a voting conflict, which is what you all deal with on a regular basis. But it's not accurate to say that there aren't conflicts that the mayor cannot have in the exercise of her authority as mayor. Because she, again, the ethics rules, the state ethics code are all very clear on what the mayor can and can't do. So certainly, for instance, she couldn't sign a contract that somehow inured to her personal benefit or that of her family or any other parties identified in the code, for example.
And one of the things that this does is that, just like city council members are required to publicly disclose, not only fill out form, but to publicly disclose in a public forum, what A says is that either the mayor or her chief of staff or someone would come before us and say, by the way, on this matter, the mayor has a conflict of interest and we would like to disclose that. That way, the mayor talked about transparency and accountability. This would provide that. And it just provides a process so the public knows. And if a conflict is disclosed, and there's a process by which the mayor can recuse herself from being involved, and I'm not just talking about this mayor, but any mayor, then there will not be unfair accusations flying about the mayor's involvement in something.
Thank you. Do we have a second on this? Ms. Hurtak? I see we have Mr. Goods. Do you want to wait for a vote?
No, I think we can go ahead.
Go ahead and vote. See a
Is
show
that
of
the opinion
hands.
of council?
We have two. We have Mr. Carlson and Ms. Hurtak. Thank you.
I have got to leave, and I'll be back as soon as I finish.
So just back to the procedural question, it does somewhat feel like it might be time for a break. Am I correct? Good. So let's be back at, can we make it 3 o'clock sharp and be ready to work?
Thank you.
Okay.
We are
good.
adjourned.
Yes,
And let's do a roll call again.
yes.
Maniscalco. Here. Miranda. Pertak.
Here.
Carlson. Here. Goods. Viera.
Here.
Citro.
Here. As I was saying, Madam Facilitator, we had stopped at salaries.
Thank you. Yes, so in section 6, is there any other element in section 6 that you want to respond to? Because we have two procedural issues. One is that we plan to end at the very latest at 5 o'clock, preferably 4:30. And we have other elements on the agenda that we want to address that went out to the public. So back to 6. Any other elements in section 6? Seeing none, Article 7, finances. I'm sorry, there's salaries in number 7 as well. But 7, starting with budget, salaries, interim budget, millage, all the way up through audits. Any of those elements that you would like to explore?
What's the pleasure of council?
Thank you. Article 8, contracts and bidding. Contracts, verbal, void, competitive bidding, all the way up through conflicts.
I see here on the sheet that, Ms. Hurtak, Councilwoman Hurtak, I see here on the sheet that was sent to us, we got supplemental provisions, 8.05. Pleasure of council? No? Okay.
Section 9,
Section 9.01. Go ahead, Councilwoman Hurtak.
Okay, are we listening to you, or who's running right now?
Excuse me, the facilitator is, but I'm
Okay.
hearing nothing that's being discussed in anything that she's been out. I was
Okay.
just pointing out that there are some that are on this
Just
list.
double checking.
That our council, our city council has given us.
Okay. I'm gonna do 9.01 boards. This does attach to, the city council attorney's, list on number 19. At the very end, it says, "There shall be such other standing boards as may be created by ordinance." My suggestion is to add a period after that. Take out the word "and" after that and start a capital A at ad hoc and change it to "ad hoc boards and committees shall be created by resolution." And the rest of it stayed the same.
thank you. Second. Call for any discussion?
And my rationale behind that is that it's very confusing about how boards are made, and I think the addition of the comma just adds to the confusion. So this is just more clarification language, in my opinion. Because it talks about how both city council and the mayor can make committees, and since it's a different method, by separating those two sentences, it clarifies it for both the public and for us.
A comma is small but mighty.
Yes, yes.
Other discussion, other rationale?
If I may.
Yes, Mr. Vieira.
Yeah, I mean, this upon first impression appears to be reasonable. I see no problem forwarding this. Again, I'll inquire further on it, et cetera, but this appears to be reasonable. Not that, by the way, if I may, not that other ones are unreasonable, by the way, so I just didn't mean that as a shot at anybody.
We want to clarify that it's correct as submitted on what Mr. Shelby had put together. I believe, Ms. Hurtak, you added a different word.
Okay, I'm sorry then. I meant by it's the same sentence that Mr. Shelby mentioned. I just wanted to do mine a little bit differently. So adding a period after ordinance, the word ordinance, correct? So if you could put that in quotes just to maybe help people. Maybe created by ordinance, have that phrase, just so folks know what I'm talking about, created by ordinance. And then start a new sentence with ad hoc boards and committees shall be created by resolution, so on and so forth, to finish the sentence. So if you could add those ellipses. I didn't mean to stop it there. Thank you for asking for clarification, because that is exactly what I'm going for.
So she changed may be to shall be.
And a couple other small things.
Yes.
Got it, thanks.
Could we call for a vote on this, please? Unanimous. So we have 5 votes, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Mr. Maniscalco, Mr. Citro, and Ms. Hurtak. Thank you. So staying in 9, we've also got personnel and compensation. It's not on the notes from Mr. Selby, but is there any other comment on that? Shelby, I think I may have misspoke. Number 21 on Mr. Shelby's comments deals with 1010 charter review. Would someone like to speak to that or any other element in number 10? On supplement 135, it's on page 18 of 19 for charter review. Mr. Citro, would you like to comment on that one?
Thank you. When I was
Yes.
on the Charter Review Commission before, I had advocated for every 5 years.
Would that be part of your motion if you were to make one?
If a motion is to be made, I would like to be the, commencing in 2027 and every 5 years thereafter.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Maniscalco.
And I appreciate that. You know, we've had a long day here and a lengthy discussion on a lot of big issues, but they merit further discussion. And, you know, the reasons for a lot of my no votes is because I was here as a city council member when we created the Charter Commission, the Charter Review Commission. My appointee is here now as a city council member. And they spent a lot of time, a lot of volunteer time. Council members Hurtak, Goods, Carlson, Citro, and others in this room, a lot of time discussing a lot of issues that are very significant. And we brought those to the ballot. So I've heard people say that it shouldn't meet every 10 years, it should meet every 5 years. Now it's scheduled for that 10th year, and we can change it to every 5 years, and I think that makes more sense to have deeper discussions because we're playing with the city's constitution, and I want to make sure that, again, like there was that full board and many meetings and many hours, we should continue having that. And at a higher frequency, I think that'd be very good.
Thank you, Mr. Maniscalco. I did speak with Ms. Crotty about her role. Thank you. Ms. Hurtak.
I would make a motion to say that, to commencing, I mean, would we want to change the year or let it start 10 years from now or from then?
So it stays on track, I guess.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to argue about that. But if we did the every 5 years thereafter, the only thing I would like to add to that, because I found it confusing as a member of the Charter Review Commission, it says here down toward the bottom, an independent person shall be engaged by the City Council to facilitate the charter review process. I do the curative language. This in that is in Council Member City Council Shelby's memo is actually from conversations he and I had, because the one thing that was the most confusing is we had 2 separate lawyers talking to us, and as members of the public and not council, it was really hard to determine who was doing or who to listen to. And so I love the idea of independent legal counsel. It doesn't mean the other 2 can't be there, but just someone who's so that the city can have their opinion, the city council can have their opinion, and then someone to kind of guide the members. Because again, not having any real city experience when I sat on the charter review board, that would have been very valuable, because oftentimes we would ask for clarification and get 2 separate answers. So that would be, my motion would be to change the commencing in 2027 and every 5 years thereafter. That would be the beginning. And then, ellipses. to continue that language. And then toward the end where it says an independent person shall be engaged by the city council to facilitate, I would actually change that to be very specific to independent legal counsel and a professional facilitator. Because an independent person could be someone you pull off the street. And I know that we all talked about the value of having an independent facilitator, not just a person. That again, I'm almost positive we used that language, so I don't know how it ended up as independent person, but that's a discussion for another day.
So Ms. Hurtak, you're supporting the language in the document that Mr. Shelby put together, which does say those exact words, independent
Yes.
legal counsel and a professional facilitator shall be engaged.
Yes.
In addition to your previous comments. Do we have a second for that? Mr. Maniscalco? Any other discussion? I saw Mr. Goods.
Well, I'm glad somebody finally did something today. We finally, got, we got a real small, what I call fruit on the ground at the last, when I just walked in, you just voted on something that wasn't controversial, that nobody would be upset about. Then we have this here, which, a person who sat on the Charter Review Commission understands the interworkings of it. But I felt those who were on there, to me, in my opinion, were disrespected today. Some of the things that we talked about as being on this council for almost 4 years and being on the Charter Review, going through documents, understanding, and now sitting in this position to really understand. We can say that we don't have any issues with the charter today, but we all know we do because there were some controversies that went on almost 4 years. That's why we talked about doing something. I wasn't looking for a total fix of everything today, but I think that some things should have went to the voters. Should have. Some things that the voters were talking to us for a while about. But again, I know it's political. I know it's election year. Nobody wants to be in controversy, be entwined. But I do support, and I wish we can go back and take the 10 years out because I think it needs to be revamped, looked at every 5 years. Waiting to 2027, I think it's too long. We know we have issues, but sometimes we're afraid of issues. I've never been afraid of anybody or nobody. I don't care who you are. Things are what they are. But I'm not afraid to say when something needs to be done. But I just don't think we need to wait to 2027, or talking about 10 years down the road after that now. It needs to be every 5 years because we know there's some issues that need to be resolved.
Would you take a friendly amendment to maybe 2025 to make, so it's kind of more consistent, or 2023, and like throughout a year?
I can do that, Ms. Hurtak. I'm a compromiser, but I just think that very disappointed about how this all went down today. Very disappointed, and I just don't understand what happened today. I really don't, but I can be comparable to that.
So as it stands, Mr. Goods, you're fine with commencing in 2027, which actually is,
2025.
you want to change that to 2025? And then every 5 years thereafter? Call for a vote?
Do we have a who was my second?
I had seconded
Were
Yes.
you okay with seconding or the amendment?
So I was thinking about the change in year. Today we had like a midway discussion, within that 10-year period, kind of. Now we've changed it to 2025. Would it be for, it would go on the 2026 ballot, is that correct?
That's a good point.
It would go into an even year and not into a city election year. Now you're
Yeah.
looking at 2027 would be the city election year. You would be meeting in 2025. That's a gap there.
Oh, 2026?
Yeah.
Would that work?
That
And
The
then it would go
2027?
roll
Sure,
into the
sure.
March. And then
That's
we have a full board discussion on the charter. Today we brought up a lot of issues that are very, very important. I understand, but that charter review commission with how many members it was, 13 members, whatever it is, you need deeper discussion, I think. But I would be happy to support it for 2026, and then going from there, which would roll it into the 2027 election year cycle and ballot.
But then every 5 years would not be able to go by ballot. If ballot was the reason we wanted to do it, it would have to be every 4 years, right? I mean, because we go through an election every 4 years. I mean, the only other thing we could do is we could do 4 or 6 years, because giving 5 years means that we would wait and wait and wait to put it on ballot. We might even, maybe 4 years is better.
I saw a hand, Mr. Carlson, thank you, Ms. Hurtak. Mr. Vieira, was it you?
He can go. Go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. Just very quickly, if I may, I would suggest if we're going to pass this, let's just, pass it. It comes back to us. We can iron out some of the more details later on after further discussion, et cetera. And the way that I see supporting this in one form or another is to give deference to the many ideas that have been put forward today, which have obviously had a lot of thought and work, et cetera, put inside within them and for them. And that gives that some measurable level of deference, I think, in the process as far as I interpret it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vieira. Mr. Carlson?
Yeah, just a couple comments. Somebody said this is not controversial. This is very controversial because this mayor and the last mayor didn't want any changes to the charter. They like it just the way it is. Why? Because they have all the power, because they're able to control everything. There's not a balance of power at all. We've just turned down all the balance of power. They argued and lobbied heavily for the Charter Review Commission. The reason why it took us however many months to look through it is because none of us knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
We didn't have any experience at all. And now we've got 4 people who actually sat through that whole process, and we actually know what we're doing. And we sat on city council, so we see all the problems. And still we weren't able to get anything. I think Charter Review Commission is fine, but it's not nearly as good as having all the experience that we have up here on the table. The bottom line with what happened today is the mayor didn't want it. And the whole thing was set, all the mayor's staff or whatever briefings anybody had, it's all set up obviously around high-fiving. The mayor has more power than 3 members of city council. That'll be the headline. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares if we got all of these passed today? The only thing that matters is whether the public's protected, and the public's not protected. So we'll go through this process, Charter Review Committee. The other thing about the independent council is we had the city council attorney appointed last time to be our representative, and then the city attorney or representative of the city attorney's office bounced in and started controlling everything, actually screamed at me from the podium, saying, "You're trying to change the strong mayor form of government." I said, "That's what city council has to do. Look at their instructions." No, they didn't. I said, "Look," and I read it off to him, just like I'm reading the charter today. If the city attorneys don't listen to us, if they don't even listen to city council, how does the public have any faith in this government at all? And all the mayor's friends are high-fiving, "Oh, isn't this great? This is not about power and control. It's not about lobbyists getting their people in charge so they can get the contracts they want. This is about protecting the public from not having the transparency that we've had. Last week there was probably a multi-$100-million project, and the staff refused to give us answers on it, and we can't do anything about it. We can't get any transparency in the city because we don't have the power. So let's have the Charter Review Commission. They'll come back and whatever administration will control it, just like the last one did, and we'll end up with nothing again. Even some of the things we passed, like even changing the pronouns, they didn't even do that in the final version. Yeah. They edited. We all know, we sat on the Charter Review Commission. They edited it between the time we passed it and the time that it went to the ballot. They edited it, and it's not right.
We have made that note about neutral gender.
Well,
Ms. Hurtak, yes.
There is also a typo in it, and I just might be the time to fix that. In the same thing, right after the every 10 years thereafter, all that stuff. But before the independent person, there's a sentence that starts with the word "however," and it says, "However, the city council may be ordinance," and it should be "may by ordinance, have the power to call for the establishment of a CRC more often in the event it so chooses." So I don't know if that's just on my copy, which happens to be number 135.
I see it as well.
Okay, so I don't know if that's something that can be fixed just because it's a error. I am not a charter expert in that type of realm, so I don't know if we would need to add that to the language. No, however.
Okay.
Yeah, however, the city may be ordinance
Okay.
have the power. So yes, it's in the others, copies as well. So, I guess I'm asking for, some direction. Do we have to actually change that by law? Or can we just say, hey, that's a
Scrivener's
typo?
error.
Is it a Scrivener's error, or is it something that we have to put back onto the ballot?
Ms. Elman, do you want to comment on that?
That's a very good question. I don't know whether by Scrivener's error ordinance we can fix all the Scrivener's errors in the charter. I've caught a few as well, without it having to go to the voters. I would think we wouldn't have to, but I can't answer with certainty today. I'll be able to tell you by Thursday.
That would be great, thank you so much, because I think that's one of those things that, like finding the he's and his's, and just a few other words that we know we changed. And since, well, I can't speak for others, but I reference this often, but never really think about that sort of thing. So that's my motion. I guess I'll leave the B out for the time being, just to not confuse people. And I believe,
This is for 2027?
yeah, no, 2026, like Mr. Vieira said, I think we can fix it between now and then, because we do need to look at election cycles, because if we don't look at election cycles, then, well, because they have to be voted on by the voters.
Yeah, but
So if we do this every 5 years, after the first one, they won't have another election to do it for several more years.
would that, I'm sorry, Martin Shelby, would that have been true for every 10 years? That, 'cause it runs
Yeah,
on a
that would have
4-year
actually
cycle.
been true for every 10 years, and we wouldn't have noticed it until then. No, I guess not, because, anyway,
You're looking at an even versus an odd number.
yeah.
So is the pleasure of the group to say 2024? Or
I would be
2026?
happy to keep it 2025 and every 5 years, and then when we come up for the actual language, we will
You
have
can do
all
that.
had a month, and legal will have had a month to really debate it, and maybe they can bring us a couple of options, and we all can discuss it then. Is that fair?
Yes. Mr. Citro?
Thank you very much. I'm looking at it from a different angle, and it is, how much time does this chambers have about videotaping and about having staff? It took us 13 months last time. However, the more often we do it, the less time it will take to tweak anything that is filled. I am sure after the first 8 years, if we do it every 4 years, that might only be a week. So I'm all for this.
So it looks like we can call for the vote that, as stated, would you please raise your hands? We have 6 votes. We have Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Mr. Maniscalco, Mr. Citro, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. Thank you. The last element is 11. I see nothing on Mr. Shelby's memo that went out
Sorry,
unless
could I-
there is something on 11.
Could I propose another one for 10?
Yes.
I think we can take a quick up or down vote on this. I propose
Which section is this?
adding to section 10.12. And I would add a new language that's called the naming of buildings, streets, and places. And this is the language, the naming of buildings, streets, and other places within the city is an important and long-term decision meant to honor those citizens that have made a remarkable and historic impact on the community. The mayor and city council may jointly create a process and committee to review naming. Any new name must be approved by the mayor and city council. However, the mayor and city council must take great care in researching these names so as to not name a building, street, or place after someone who has conducted egregious acts such as civil rights violations that could harm the reputation of the city, intimidate, or hurt its residents. There should be a comma there.
So we have a motion to add 10.12 as a new element, a new section.
I'll second that.
Second, Ms. Hurtak, thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Hurtak.
This actually brings up a point for me that I may bring Thursday. Well, I guess I could do it at the end of this meeting. But, you know, a lot of these sections where folks are saying, hey, you know, we could possibly make these ordinances. We already have this nice collection that you have spent a lot of time on and others of us have spent time on. I think it would be really awesome if we could try to make some of these just by ordinance. If that pleases you, I'm just thinking about this because this is very specific, and to me it reads more like an ordinance. I would be fine to add it to the charter, but I'm just thinking about all these other things. If the discussion is, well, we don't need it in the charter, we can make it by ordinance.
Yeah, and the the only reason why I propose it as a charter amendment is because the city attorney's office recently said that only the mayor has the right to do this. And that's not an accurate interpretation of the charter. And so we can try to pass an ordinance that says that the city council and the mayor jointly have the right to do it. I mean, the charter really is silent to it. And just as I asked one of the city attorney's representative, just because the mayor controls the administration of buildings doesn't mean that the mayor can sell property without city council approval, sign a contract for a property without city council approval, sign a lease without city council approval, even hire someone to paint the building without city council approval. So why should the mayor have exclusive right to name something? It doesn't make sense. And so putting this in a charter just prevents a city attorney from giving an inaccurate interpretation of the charter. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Vieira?
And I would explain my vote on this is, before anybody thinks that those who vote against this want to name a building in Tampa after Strom Thurmond or something, this is something that could be interpreted as being a narrowly tailored effort, and I just don't want that in the charter. Obviously, I don't think anybody wants any buildings, et cetera, named after people who do egregious acts, civil rights violations, et cetera, et cetera. Just and again, out of respect to Councilman Carlson, that's all I'll say, but just my short, curt feelings on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Maniscalco.
A few years ago, I made a motion to restore the name of Laurel Street Bridge to Fortune Taylor Bridge. Fortune Taylor was a woman who was once enslaved but owned about 30 acres of land in that part of downtown near the Straz and whatnot, and I was able to get it with unanimous city council approval without the mayor having to weigh in, and then we had to talk to other departments, I think at the state level, but the bridge is named Fortune Taylor Bridge today. So, city council has, we've had the authority to do it because I was able to do it. So I don't know if this is necessary, I don't know, and I know how tradition works with mayors will name something for previous mayors, going back to like Curtis Hickson, and I'm going back to the 1950s, but I get it. I mean, there's tradition there, but again, we've been able to do it as city council, or honorary street renaming for somebody that's deceased or made a major contribution to the city. We've done that, so I don't know if this is necessary. If not, we can always look at it as an ordinance. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, and as it
Mr.
says in here, the second part of it is, it prohibits city council or the mayor from naming anything after someone who's conducted egregious acts such as a civil rights violations. And that's pretty straightforward to me. It seems like something we would want to prevent.
Yes, Mr. Goods?
I just thought of something ring a bell. I just read read an executive order from the mayor in reference to that. And I think you both are kind of right. Mr. Shelby, if we can do it by ordinance, I think that might work versus just putting it in the charter. So what do you think about that? I got an executive order because we both talked about names some people about some things, Mr. Maniscalco, and I was given an executive order saying that we could not do that. And I was like, well, this council had an ordinance, but I didn't get into it with the person. So now it's just kind of my antennas have gone up. Can you elaborate on it, Mr. Chairman?
Well, that would be a question for Ms. Zellman,
Ms. Zelman, whoever.
because that goes back to what was being discussed this morning as to whether something is
Yep.
in the separation of
Right.
powers.
Could I say while she's getting up, what
Yes.
this does, it says it has to be approved by the mayor and city council. So it's not one or the other. City council can't do it on their own. And so you could interpret that maybe the charter as it is, that one could do it and one can't. This means that we have to agree on it.
Andrea Zellman, city attorney. I don't believe that the intent of the executive order was to take city council out of the process. I think it was to give the mayor final approval. I would suggest that that's something we could look more carefully at, and I believe it could be addressed by ordinance. I don't believe it needs a charter change. And one thing that concerns me is putting in language like someone who has committed egregious acts. I mean, who defines that? You know, even the word civil rights violations. You know, we've had instances at the city where people have been accused of violating other people's civil rights. It just, that to me is very difficult language, and I would hate to be put in the position of having to interpret that on a case-by-case basis.
That's why these would go, none of them have been approved on my side anyway, but this would go to the city attorney for review and to their attorneys for recommendations on it. But let me ask you, in your opinion, cause we remember Dingfelder tried to name a park after Linda Salsena, and that's when the whole system got mixed up, and then the executive order came out that prohibited it, and then Dingfelder was thrown out with the help of the former city attorney. Let me ask, in your opinion, can city council decide to name something by ourselves? Can city council vote to name something without the mayor's
Again,
approval?
I need to look at this more carefully. My understanding was that the executive order adopted a process that had been vetted through city council, if I'm
I don't
incorrect.
think we codified the.
We never got that, because that's when I first
Okay.
named the.
Let us look at that, because again, the
No,
intent.
but we have to vote today on, I mean, you can come back and tell us, but the point is that right now, but the way I've heard the interpretation, the city attorney's opinion in the past has been city council cannot name something by themselves. So the question is, can the mayor name something by his or herself? And prior city attorneys, I think, have said that is true. Well, what this says, it says the mayor and city council have to agree.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of that is to prevent something from, you know, some name from being put up that the public would object to. You know, we've had that happening in the city already, and we can't go back and necessarily change the past, but we can look forward and not make mistakes about decisions that could be made.
I think,
Ms. Zelman said she needs to research
Yeah.
that more.
I think the issue is that the charter specifically talks about the mayor having control over the real estate and all the facilities of the city. The city council doesn't have that same control over the property. Nevertheless, my understanding, and I'll go back and look at it more carefully, was that the intent of the process was to provide a process where if city council wanted to propose the naming of something, there would be a uniform process followed for every naming.
But it still says that the mayor gets to make the decision, and what this says is that it's shared. And so we could still approve this, and the city attorney can give us opinions on how to change it. But the problem, Ms. Facilitator, is that, and not to blame this city attorney, but many times city staff will come before us and they'll say, like last week, we don't know the answer. And then as soon as the meeting's over, well, we knew the answer, but we didn't want to tell the public. Why? Why do you not want to have transparency? And so what will happen is as soon as we leave here, then we'll get an opinion that says, this is not Ms. Zellman, but prior city attorneys will leave and they'll say, well, we don't know, we have to interpret it. And then we get done with the meeting, they'll say, yeah, only the mayor has the power. We're not, and this is important because I don't object to the process that was in the executive order, but for some reason, that somebody in the city's attorney's office decided to put a whereas clause that gives the mayor full right to name buildings and approve buildings, and that's not at all in the charter, not remotely in the charter. And what I've been trying to do all day is to stop the city attorney's office, and I'm talking about prior city attorneys, from changing the charter with a couple paragraphs of an interpretation.
Thank you. Do you want to call for a vote at this point?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Zelman.
May I, 20 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, this is something that I could, in one form or another, support an ordinance But again, like I said, Councilman Maniscalco mentioned the issue of prior mayors potentially in the ordinance, taking that out so it's not narrowly tailored to one thing. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that a couple years ago, I think I was the first city councilman to give money for moving of the Confederate Memorial, first one to speak at a rally for that, very passionate. If it was up to me, we'd rename Lee County into Ulysses Grant County. So I'm big into that, but again, I want to narrowly tailor this to the larger purpose, I guess, if you will. So just explaining my vote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your clarification. So as the motion has been written, the key word here is both. We call for a vote to put this in. In the charter, we have 2 votes, Mr. Carlson and Ms. Hurtak. Thank you. You have a comment?
I actually, I know we went through this by number, but Mr. Carlson brought up one section that we had debated quite a bit during the Charter Review Commission, and there were 2 parts to it. He brought one forward, and I wanted to bring the other forward. If that's okay if I go backwards a little bit?
Let me check on time. Here's what we're dealing with, is
It'll be quick, I promise.
Thank you. Is that we have an agenda that had gone out also to the public, and we had skipped over section 2. When I asked for any comments, no one raised their hands, but it's on the agenda as a specific item.
That was item number 2, not section number 2. That's, I think, why none of us talked about it.
Yes, it's item 2 on the agenda and focuses on, forgive me if I've stated that incorrectly, but yes, it's item number 2 on the agenda, and we need to reserve time for that. So how long do you think this next item will take that you're mentioning?
Probably 5 minutes. I don't think it's gonna be really, I just have to bring it up because I brought it up during CRB and, or not CRB, I'm sorry. Yeah, CRC, too many acronyms, during the Charter Review Commission. So probably maybe 10 minutes at most, because
Pleasure of the group.
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So this motion has to do with section 2.02, which is term limits for city council. Councilman Carlson brought up term limits for mayors, and during that discussion, we also talked about term limits for council. So I would actually like to bring that up. And so section 2, I would take off the full end of that section 2.02, basically letting people hop from one district to another, and basically saying you can run 2 consecutive full terms and then not run for the succeeding term, but you could come back, after 4 years. We definitely discussed that. It didn't really go anywhere. I don't know if it'll go anywhere now, but I really believe that that the hopping, I don't believe in the hopping.
Can you say, I'll second that, but can you say what year it would start, please?
Obviously, the voters would have to vote on it, so it would have to happen after that term. So if the vote is, so I guess it would be 2027. And again, it doesn't prevent somebody from going again. They just have to put 4 years between, is my motion.
Second.
Thank you for having that in writing. Yes, Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, ma'am. So just to clarify, so you're saying that someone who represents a single member district can then go citywide, but they have to wait 4 years, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So Ms. Hurtak has a motion with what's in writing. Who would second that? Mr. Carlson? Any further discussion?
And this would
Yes,
commence
Mr. Maniscalco.
Yes, ma'am. Commence in 2027?
Because if you think about it, if they voted on it, I mean, whoever's voting on this is voting on whoever's running at the same time. You couldn't go backward on that. I mean, if someone were elected, we couldn't just toss them out of office. But yeah, so that would be for whatever office that is.
After they are term limited
Yeah.
to two 4-year terms.
Yes, and then they could take a little bit of a break and then come back for 2 more four-year term, you know, if the voters will have them. Again, I mean, this could be debated later, but I know we talked about it during the charter review, and I think it's something that we should all talk about.
Thank you. Did we have a motion?
I had the motion.
I'm sorry, did we have a second? Mr. Carlson, call for the vote to pass this. We have 4, it passes. Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. Thank you. I think you were right, 10 minutes. Pretty good.
Not even.
Not even. If we may then, and thank you for going through all those sections and your willingness to explore. So if we look at our agenda on page 3 of the official document that went out to the public, it's item number 2, file number CM 22-76273. And may I read to you that the legal department to prepare and present a draft ordinance September 22nd, 2022, to put the Citizen Review Board subpoena power and independent counsel on the ballot for voters to decide using the following codes, and the codes follow. Original motion was initiated by Hurtak Carlson on July 28th, 2022. May we have some discussion on that, Ms. Hurtak?
This was my motion, and I asked the city attorney about if there was a draft ordinance, and she said that we had talked earlier about waiting to see where it went before a draft ordinance was created. So that's, but I believe we've really heard from the public today. Regardless of how I feel about the issue, I think the public has spoken.
Is there the ordinance?
So my motion is to, I guess would be to for the legal department to draft an ordinance. Let's say to put independent counsel on the ballot for the voters to decide. Let's split it up.
What about subpoena power?
You want to put them together?
Oh, no, you're taking it separately? Okay.
Separate? Yeah, so I would like to, that's what I'm saying. My motion is to create a draft ordinance based on the codes and ordinances mentioned in the motion, which is Miami Code, Miami-Dade Code, Broward Code, Key West Charter, Orange County Code, for independent counsel to put on the ballot for voters to decide.
Mr. Vieira, are you seconding?
Oh, I'm speaking, if I may. Thank you.
Yes.
So, thank you very much. So, there's, for me, a split between the attorney, the separate attorney, independent counsel, whatever you want to call it, and subpoena power. I think there are separate issues there. One, I think, is a reasonable choice that I support, the independent attorney. The other one I do not, for reasons I'll state. With regards to the separate attorney, I think that's reasonable. I've had the same position on this for about 1.5 years, 2 years, et cetera, which is the CRB being able to have a separate attorney who is not a direct city attorney, who is paid for by the city of Tampa, out of the attorneys with whom we contract, and there are many, many of them. That's reasonable. I've never seen any issue with that. I don't see a downside from that. I see no detriment from that. With regards to the subpoena power, even if it does not deal with police officers, my big challenge with that has been, and I believe it was very briefly mentioned in their remarks, which is just because something is a closed disciplinary case does not mean it is a closed criminal case. And that leaves real potential for challenges there with regards to this board with ongoing criminal cases that I, as an attorney, respectfully cannot support. I know there's people who respectfully disagree with me, and that's fine. But just because there is a closed disciplinary case does not mean that the criminal case is closed, and that can lead to a whole lot of trouble with our state attorney, with courts, et cetera, that I don't think it is our intent to go there. So that's the real dispositive issue for me with regards to the subpoena power. Again, the attorney, glad to support it, second it, et cetera. Based on the code. So I don't know about the Broward, Key West, et cetera. I'll have to look at that in between now and then when it comes back. But again, separate counsel for me is a reasonable step to take, but subpoena power is not, given that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're supporting one element of that, the independent counsel. Other discussion?
That's the only motion I put up for right now. Was independent.
Is to have both?
No, it's to have independent counsel. We're gonna
Independent
take it as two
counsel.
separate issues.
All right. So in here, although it says subpoena power, we're taking that out.
We're doing them as two separate motions.
Two separate
Right now,
motions.
we're talking about independent counsel, and then we will talk about subpoena power.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the independent counsel?
I'll second it.
Mr. Vieira, thank you. Other discussion for independent counsel? Let's call for a vote. We have 4. Thank you. We have Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. I believe I called that correctly. Yes? Good. So the second one goes with the subpoena power. Any other description? I know you said the public has spoken. Any other discussion on that before? Yes, Mr. Carlson?
Yeah, first of all, this is not a change. It's in section 2.14. I read it out already. We already have subpoena power, and we can delegate it to our authority. If we get a correct interpretation by a city attorney, we don't need to add this. But because of an incorrect interpretation in the past by a former city attorney, we have to have this to try to clarify that we can do this. Based on the charter as it is, we can delegate this already. But because of the incorrect thing, we need to have it. The other thing I should say is that to any of the police officers watching, we had some in the room earlier today, to any of them watching, I think unlike my colleagues, I did not have the PBA support me, but I've supported them 100%, and I supported the police officers 100%. When they asked for pay raises, when we had 150 people in the room saying we need to cut the police budget, I agreed with everybody else to increase it. And we got a lot of flack for that, but we did it because we wanted to support the good police officers out there. And I think 99.9% of them are good. There were some bad leaders in the past. There are some bad mayors that have given policies that have even caused us to go under civil rights investigation like we are right now. But 99.9% of the police officers out there have defended us and protected us. But of the 0.01 or whatever it is, we need to make sure we do everything to get them off the streets and to make sure that they're scrutinized carefully. And I've mentioned publicly examples of that before. I also voted to separate the health insurance a couple years ago, and I also voted to give pay increases, not to just the police, but to all employees. And so with that, the union or individual police officers may be upset with us. I think one of the people my aide met with said this might hurt morale. It shouldn't hurt morale for anybody who's doing the right thing. People who do the right thing should not face any kind of problems if there's objective analysis. And the last thing I'll say is that when we discussed this before, people have said to us, well, you should trust the mayor because she's a former police chief, and her chief of staff is a former deputy police chief. Guess what? In the last 3 years, getting the budget increase, getting the police chief the mayor wanted, getting all the budget increases that the mayor wanted, the former police chief still has one of the highest violent crime rates in the country. The violent crime rate has gone up every year for the last 3 years. And so if the violent crime rate continues to go up, it's not because of this. It's because of bad policies in the past. And I would argue that policies like biking while black and renting while black have led to a feeling of oppression in the community and hopelessness that leads people to want to feel like their only choice is crime. And we have to address the underlying issues, and nobody in this administration has been willing to address those at all. We do have a new head of economic development, I think, is interested in it. But we can't, the solution is not roughing up people who haven't committed crimes. The solution is absolutely we need to support our police officers, but we need to support our community as well. And we need to make sure that people are unfairly treated are protected. And there have been some really bad cases, even in the last few months. And no big public investigations, no big press conferences say how horrible it is. And we need to make sure that that our public feels protected. And the police that are doing the right thing, they need to be protected as well. This subpoena power does not apply to police at all. It only applies to people that may have been involved in some way. And we already have the policy. It's not really changing anything.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Mr. Goods, yes, discussion?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. You know, nobody's on this board has ever been a police officer but me. Let's talk about morale. What's something I know about the police department? See, the police department is a paramilitary organization. We follow orders. We do what we're told to do. We may not like it, but we do what we're told to do because that's what we're sworn to do. Always say there's a difference between a general employee and a police employee. See, with a police employee, if a sergeant tells you to do something, you just do it. It's not a matter of you ain't going to do it, you just do it. It's not you'll get round to it when you want to get round to it. If a citizen calls the sergeant and complains, the sergeant's going to call you over and he's going to say, write me a letter. I see two officers in the back. I work with Ed. Write me a letter. General employee, you know, well, let's talk about it. The paradigm is totally different at that place over there. You do what you're told to do, and that's it. Morale. Morale only goes down when we talk about money. Police officers like money. When morale goes down. There are a lot of policies that come out that I didn't like. You didn't like it, you didn't do it, you took the consequences, or you move on. But again, morale usually comes with money. And again, I tell you, when policies come out, a lot of times police officers hate change sometimes, but when it comes down, you get through it the first couple of weeks, and after that, it's gone. It's just what the policy is, what you got to do. It's what you got to do. You do your job. You know, it's not, and I love my union friends, but the police department is not the union's police department. They support the officers for investigations and things that might be wrong in the department. Certain things, no matter what, if the chief says this is going to be done, no matter what the union says, it's pretty much how it goes sometimes. But I respect the union. But for me, we talk about processes. I remember when we made a deal, and Mr. Bennett, somebody called me and said, John Bennett, put your photo up there with the mayor signing it. I said, yeah, well, you know, that's a part of the process. But as you remember, that was a tough day. That was a tough day. That was a swing vote that day, and went the police way, went the mayor way. You recall. And then I asked several of my councilmen, I said, listen, me being the new chairman, I know you guys didn't agree at that time, but would you just stand with me? Remember that? I don't want to go there. So I don't want to mention the name. I don't want to go there, but what happened? I asked you guys to stand behind me and support me. And we did that. We did that. We said within a year's time, we wanted the CRB to come back and tell us what they felt needed to be done or didn't be done. Am I correct, gentlemen?
You are correct.
And the gentleman came today, and he was clear that with their report, as you recall maybe a couple of months ago, he came up to clarify what the paper was saying and clarify what they voted on. And he came today and said that they had a 6-2 vote, that they thought all this should go to the voters, if I'm not mistaken. That's what he said. They wanted to take it out of their hands. They said they came back and told this board what they felt they heard. He said there were not a lot of issues, you know. He said that the police department was cooperative. He said all those things. But he said that his body decided to vote for what the people said they wanted and for the voters to decide. And they wanted council to give their blessings to send it to the voters and let the voters decide. I met with the chief and Miss Newcomb, her attorney, and they told me, and we talked. And I told them I was gonna make phone calls to talk to people. And I called down in Miami, talked to some friends down there, called my good friend over in Broward, commissioner over there, talked to them about how their boards work. They told me they haven't had any difficulties, any problems. No problems at all. People know the process. But right now, I have to decide on, well, I don't have to decide because I don't care about an endorsement or I don't care about, being like, that's not my thing. My thing is talking about the people. People elected me to do a job. They elected me to be friends with anybody. They elected me to do a job. My mind is still ticking until she says and calls for a vote, but I can tell you that with this gentleman, the CRB chairman, coming up here today and said that his board voted to take it to the voters and ask this council to do that. I have to think about that. I can't be afraid of a decision. I never have, never will be. So I'll sit back and listen to other councilmen's comments, but in my mind, a person of that board spoke. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The discussion point is subpoena power, Mr. Miranda. Yes, Ms. Hurtak.
I will, I have a few points. We heard and we've been hearing citizens asking for transparency. I agree with Mr. Carlson. I haven't been on as long as you have, but I have supported the police and everything they've asked for. Didn't even look through the budget, looked good to me. Honestly, I think we should pay our officers more. When you pay officers more, it goes back to my job as a teacher. When I was a teacher, everybody hates you. Everybody thinks teachers are terrible except for their kid's teacher. They loved us, they loved the school, but all the others are terrible. And so that does affect morale, but you know what you got into. So when I was a teacher, the worst was going to a cocktail party and someone would say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm a third grade teacher." And they would just start to look at you like, "Oh, you sweet little thing." And that happened all the time. They didn't think they could have a substantive conversation with me. I just finished the police academy, which was awesome. And by the way, I recommend it to everyone, regardless of how people feel. I think it was incredibly valuable. I learned a lot that I didn't know before. But in that, one of the officers mentioned the fact that she doesn't talk about what she does when she goes to the gym. She kind of works out by herself because she doesn't want to have to mention it. I have been in those shoes. I know exactly what she means. And I think that's sad. I think that's unfortunate. But we all sign up to do a job, and we know I hate to say it, we know we're going to be criticized. When I became a teacher, I knew I was going to be criticized. But I still wanted to work for the public and do the job that I felt passionate about, and I know all of our officers feel passionate about. After I got appointed, my very first stop was the union office. I don't know that they have any more support for me now than they did then, but, I'll have that discussion. I don't mind. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about any issue. In talking to several people within the administration, I got someone to say that they agreed that nothing would really change with this. It's really a morale issue. And I just, for me, the fact that nothing would change kind of sways a bit. Also, the fact that, I do appreciate that the CRB voted that they would like to see it on the ballot as well. But we as a board can't think about the people who are sitting on that board because just like us, they're only there for a certain amount of time. We have to look at the board as a board with empty seats. How do we want this to run? So those are my points that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Ms. Hurtak. Yes, Mr. Carlson.
Just one more quick thing. We talked about body-worn cameras. The folks who wanted to protect the public wanted them, and the police wanted them. Why? Because it has proof. If somebody alleges that a police officer did something bad, it has proof one way or the other. And we've had to tweak that from time to time. But in the case that somebody alleges that a police officer did something badly and the body worn camera doesn't pick it up, the CRB could subpoena a camera across the street to look at it. And it could, if the police officer did something wrong, it could prove that they did something wrong. But if they didn't, it also defends the police officer. So, I mean, the facts are what they are. If you don't do something bad, you don't get investigated in theory. But if somebody unfairly alleges, if I was a police officer, I'd want the CRB to have access to that information because it might help exonerate me. I've been around enough trials and seen people set up that it's essential to have all the information. Why would we not want the CRB to have all the information available? And so I think, even though right now some of the police officers are against it, I think it will as much protect them as it could potentially hurt them. But as long as they're staying out of trouble, then it shouldn't cause a problem at all. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the comments, and Councilmember Vieira brought up a couple of issues regarding closed cases and open investigations on the other end. I have concerns with Fourth Amendment rights. What if somebody doesn't want to hand over footage? Should they have that? What if something takes place in a condo or apartment complex? Does everybody's Ring doorbell footage get subpoenaed? What if people don't want to cooperate or hand over the footage? Do they get charged with, contempt or whatever it is when they're not handing over information? I don't know. I don't know those answers. I know Judge Salcinas was here earlier, discussed further topics and further talking points of the state attorney, a grand jury through the county getting involved. If there is a bigger case, how that board can look at cases or remand them somewhere else. Will it change anything, the subpoena power? One gentleman mentioned that in another county it was used in 2009 and 2015 twice. So we could ask the question, well, what is everybody so afraid of? But at the same time, is it necessary to have? You know, the board is looking at closed cases. I've sat in on several CRB meetings. One most recently that I just observed. I sat quietly and I watched, but again, you know, I brought up the time that I've been here. I was here to vote for that board to be created. I was here and speaking with Mayor Buckhorn and trying to come to an agreement because we were at a stalemate back and forth between council and the mayor for that board to be created. Then, most recently, and Councilmember Goods talked about cooperation between the council and the mayor's office and signing their agreement. You know, we've made advances. My question is, you know, does the subpoena power truly make a difference? Is it absolutely necessary, considering that they're looking at closed cases? Considering everything else I've said, what if people don't want to hand over that footage? Should they have anything, you know? Then what? Is it absolutely necessary? Is the police department doing enough of a good job in internal investigations? I don't know. Some people might say yes, some people might say no, but, you know, again, I echo the concerns, primarily what Councilmember Vieira mentioned regarding it could be a closed case, it could be active somewhere else, another criminal investigation, which also tells me that there's another set of eyes looking at these items. So that's where I stand in regards to the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maniscalco. I think what you might have been referring to was obstruction when you talked about Fourth Amendment rights. Am I correct? Thank you. Ms. Hurtak.
We actually have 3 citizen boards that are non-elected, that are appointed boards that already have subpoena power. One of those is code enforcement, and so I would assume that the code enforcement would be very similar in that, you know, they would often get Ring doorbells and things like that, and I've heard nothing.
I was on that board for 3 years, and we never even brought up the word subpoena.
For 8
Yeah,
years.
but you have the power.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. That's kind of the issue of, okay, seems like a big kerfluffle about something that just the board could have if they need. But really, I keep coming back to the fact that gentleman came up this morning and said that the board itself voted to send it to the voters.
Thank you. Other comments?
I haven't been
Mr.
here
Miranda?
for the whole thing, but I got the text of what the conversation is. And I did hear everything that was said this morning by both sides of the individuals that were here, and thank them for having the time to come, all of them. This is a difficult one. You're looking at what's going on in America today regarding anything regarding law enforcement. It's a sad situation what's happening throughout the whole country on both sides. And it's time that we step up and do our due diligence ourselves. We have subpoena power. This council has subpoena power. And I don't believe personally that it should be given to another board that was never elected. Or not elected to that kind in point in time. I heard what Judge Salsina said today, and he made that reference to what if, and he made some, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but he phrased it in a situation that if you limited immunity or something like that, that is bothersome, because if somebody just have limited immunity and it goes to court and you can't do anything, what's the sense of doing it unless you really understand what's going on? So the powers of subpoenas are to where the judges, the state attorney, the prosecutor, the policing, the FBI or something like that. And it's a very delicate situation that you should have respect at all times. And to give that authority away, not away, I shouldn't say that way, to give that authority and be responsible for somebody else's, what they intend to do with it, I'm not going to take that risk. I believe law enforcement on both sides, on the judicial and the police officers, the sheriff's department, and so forth and so on, are doing the best they can with what they have today. America has changed, and it hasn't been for the best. All of us have changed. We have a country now where somebody said I could do this and that. Nobody's going to do anything to me. That's without mentioning names and doing whatever. And since then, there's been an increase in crime, really in killings, I should say, in America. So I don't know if that's a cause. Guns is certainly part of it. People that, for whatever reason, there's more murders today in America than ever before. We used to look at the country in Central and South America and say, look at them yo-yos. Now they're looking at us saying, what's wrong with them? We're becoming something we don't want to be. And it's just gotten to the point that somebody's got to take responsibility. And it's harder and harder to get anyone to become a police officer in this country. For whatever reason, I don't know the cause. I wish I did. But therefore, I would not be supporting subpoena powers to go anywhere.
Thank you for your clarity. Mr. Goods?
Well, there you have it. There's no need to belabor us or wait around. We need to go ahead and just take the vote. Unfortunately, I serve a district that depends on me to vote my conscience, depends on me to do the right thing. I had a gentleman come here today who's the chairman of the board. That board, we entrusted to do the right thing. We gave them rules and regulations to come back here within a year to tell us what they felt they needed, what they didn't need it. They came today. The chairman came today. He told me he was going to come. So we've done that board a disservice, in my opinion. We can't be afraid of the unknown. I'm not afraid of the unknown. But I will say that it will not pass today to the voters, but I'm going to support it because that board worked hard and went through all the scrutiny, and they worked hard over a year, and they were given a task, and they came back and gave us their opinion for their yearly evaluation. And that was a 6-2. So I will be supported. I know it's going to fail, but I say to the voters, hold on, trust in the process, and trust that people are going to do the right things. And most of the times, generally, they all do work out. But for me, my 53%, I have to support this today and support the decision of the CRB board.
Thank you, Mr. Goods. And it sounds as if you were suggesting we call for the vote.
Call for the vote.
Let's call for the vote, and this deals with the subpoena power. Please, show of hands. We have 3. We have Mr. Carlson, Ms. Hurtak, and Mr. Goods. Thank you. It did not pass. I would like to yield back to the chairperson, Mr. Citro, as we look at the full agenda. We have item 3 and 4. How did you want to proceed on that? Actually, my role as the facilitator could include that, but nevertheless, mine had to do more specifically with walking through the elements of the charter in Mr. Shelby's document. Number 3 is the council to discuss the charter amendments to include discussion on the possibility of an attorney representing the position of the mayor. We talked about that to some extent. Number 4, council to discuss why or if the city attorney or other parties in the city should be able to approve contracts. How did you want to proceed on these?
Are these charter amendments that the council wishes to discuss? We've discussed this.
We've discussed everything now.
So then this is fine, because the agendas did not necessarily match up, as you noticed. So I
Correct.
wanted to clarify how we're
Is-
going to do that, since
Agenda
this
items
is,
number 3 and 4, is council quite satisfied of what is up?
Yes.
Thank you.
so that concludes the agenda for the items.
We didn't
Because
schedule
we
the-
have next steps and timeline to look at.
Yes.
Ms. Hurtak?
Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. This has been a calmest meeting as we've had in quite some time, so I want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Any other
So-
council member that would like to make comment?
Likewise, I want to appreciate everything you've done, and your mannerisms are great, the way you present yourself. It'll come in more often, we'll be better off.
Thank you. Invitation accepted. So let's spend just a few minutes. We have next steps. If you'll look up on the screen, here's what we are looking to do. That the note taker throughout, we also had more than one note taker with the idea of getting your comments and making sure that you get a full report. So those that did pass, we want to be able to present the ballot language recommendations to the chair by November 18th. Does that work?
Yes.
Has to be by the,
Entered into the CYRE system by the 17th to meet the December 1st deadline of November. November 17th is the CYRE deadline for the December 1st agenda.
So that would be 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
16 days.
so give us a date, because this is you setting your timeline. This is not our timeline. We want to do this so that there's a record that you've all agreed how this will proceed.
What is, the-
Ms. Zellman, what was it, the 16th, we need to have this to you?
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Just for the recording.
November 17th is the CYRE deadline for any item to be presented on the December 1st agenda. So the ordinance will have to be written and uploaded into CYRE by November 17th.
And count,
would we prefer it 2 days before?
if I can, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Shelby?
With the time crunch being what it is, I don't know to what extent I'd be able to make that deadline. I guess it's a question of working with the city attorney and the city attorney's staff. I'm
We
certainly,
said,
what did you say?
we said all along that it would be an outside attorney
Yeah.
working from the city attorney's office, and that the city attorney gave us a list and we can pick one.
Okay. Okay,
So
well,
we can
that's-
pick, we can
that's-
pick that attorney on Thursday if we want.
That's different from the next steps then, I
Council,
guess.
or are we still with the facilitator?
Can pick the attorney on Thursday,
It's
just
supposed,
to put this in next steps, so
we
that
had
you have
previously
a
agreed that
complete
it would be an
recording
outside
of what
attorney
we.
who would work with the city attorney and the city council attorney. And so the city attorney had offered us to pick from the pre-approved list. So we don't have the list here unless city attorney has it. So we just need to go through the list and pick one.
Correct. So noted. Ms. Hurtak?
I only think we have 2 things that passed to begin with.
Yes.
So,
No, I
I mean, I think 2 weeks is
3.
plenty of time to do that, to at least get a decent thing.
do we, may
There
we
are
have?
4.
4 were approved.
I mean, just, council, or, city council Shelby, just to remind you, we only forwarded 2 things. So, yeah, only 2 things.
Well, I think if we can, before we close up, I think we should have an agreement as to what is moving forward. Is there a way to be
So
able?
I'm sorry, there were 4 things. So we're not talking like a giant, so choosing the outside counsel, we should be able to do that this Thursday and then move on.
We also have the issue that only passed by 4 votes, so if the mayor vetoes it, then
Yeah,
it comes
well, I
back.
mean,
We will get a reporting on those 4 things. Give us one moment.
We'll put all 4 up on a slide, give us 1 second.
Nevertheless, considering that there's 4 items, what timeline, date did we come up with? We should be able to get you the final notes in the next day or 2, if not sooner. They're already on the PowerPoint. Mr. Vieira, yes.
And now, if I may, Councilwoman Hurtak, were you in the middle of speaking, or?
no,
Oh, just
no.
making sure. I was gonna say, I mean, if we're looking at something within a week, maybe we can delegate to our city council attorney, Mr. Shelby, to take a look at the list, find some attorneys from that list, that he would find appropriate and proper, just to expedite the process, so we don't have to look at a huge list of 10, 15 law firms.
Second.
Yeah, and just expedite it.
Can we vote on that?
We will add that. Thank you.
Can we vote on that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, so we have a list of attorneys that have been pre-approved. We don't have the budget. So we also need to discuss the budget. I assume this is going to come out of the city council budget to pay for them. What we can do is, from the attorneys that responded to our RFQ, we'll identify those, because they indicated which subject areas they wish to be hired for. So we'll have to go through them and identify those that would have the right kind of experience or that offered to do the kind of work that would be required to draft. Now, if any of you know of someone that's already on our list that you would suggest, feel free to tell us. But again, we'll go through what we got back and see which on the list would be appropriate. And then we have to discuss the budget issue as well. And just to clarify on the timing, November 17th is the date to get the ordinance uploaded into SIRE, so that you all can address it on December 1st and for first reading. But of course, you'll have time to review it in between November 17th and December 1st. And
Is it okay if we schedule the first hearing for December 1st and the second one for December 15th? December 1st is either morning or night, and then December 15th is only morning.
I think that's a question. Mr. Shelby had come up with the date, so I'll let him answer.
We didn't
that.
vote on that yet, right?
Question,
Those are the dates of your meetings that you have available unless you want to do a special call.
question from Ms. Zellman.
I don't have a calendar in front of me here.
Yes.
You said something about the city attorney doesn't have a budget for this. I'm kind of confused when we approved the list, we approved money for the city attorney's office.
No, that was a big misunderstanding that I've been
Okay.
trying to explain to
All right.
people. Each contract did have a built-in $100,000 cap, but that didn't mean that you approved $100,000 per law firm. Our internal budget for outside attorneys is almost exhausted for the year 2023 already, because we had a lot of carryover bills from 2022. So we don't have the money in our budget for this. And again, what you approved was the ability for us to hire those attorneys quickly without having to bring a contract back to council, but it didn't approve the funding for any of those contracts.
Okay.
How's it going? How will that work then?
Well, you have the finance man right there. You have Mr. Rihero right there. Mr. Rihero? Dennis? Well, Mr. Shelby asked a question, and so you're the money man, so Where does the election, if we had an election today, where would that money come from? How would elections pay? Because the city has to pay the supervisor election for elections, correct?
Yes, sir, we have an election appropriation in anticipation of that.
Okay, so, reference to charter or ballot, would that fit into that same thing? Because it would be during the election cycle?
If you'll allow me to look and report back.
All right, I think maybe we can draw some money from there, if, the allocations. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
How quickly could you report back?
Very.
So Thursday?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
And a question with regard to the attorney that, and Ms. Zellman, with regard to the list and the like, that would have to come back Thursday too, so that would leave tomorrow.
So the money man will know what it'll cost us. Well, give us an idea.
Yeah, it won't take us long to go through the list and just identify which of the law firms that responded indicated that they had that kind of experience.
I would like to make a motion to hold the first hearing on December 1st at the night meeting and the second hearing on December 15th in the morning.
These are for the ordinances?
For the ordinances, yeah. Can we vote on that? Or,
Call for a vote?
yeah, can we vote on that, please?
Well, why don't we,
December 1st and
Or
15th.
you want to speak on that?
December, what's the date? The first and there are meetings on the 1st and the 15th, oh, they're right.
There was a motion and a second. Is there another discussion?
Just very briefly, my only
Yes.
concern would be December 1st, if we have land use hearings, this may take a while, and I don't want to see something where, we start land use hearings at 7 or 8. Just my thoughts.
What other choice do we have?
Ms. Hurtak?
I agree to that, but also on something like this evening, more public is available, and the thought being really to make it as available to the public as possible. I don't think our calendar has how many items are on the evening agenda.
Of what day?
December 1st.
The
December
first.
1st?
December 1st, it just says ordinance being presented for first, just
And
we have
then then you have,
some text amendments and a few other things, but I'm not sure what else we have because it's not, the calendar isn't really clear. I don't know if anyone who's listening, who works in that division could help us out,
and
but.
for what time again? For the 5 o'clock?
Ms. Travis, is that you hiding behind the board that I can't see? Do you have access to that information?
Why is she even here, though?
I don't know.
You mean, why am I here?
That shows how versatile you ought to be in tune, everything that goes on around this place. I don't know, I was here earlier too, but hey, it is what it is.
Just wondering if you know how many items are on that December 1st evening agenda. You yourself may not know, but I know you have the superpower to text others quickly.
Just give me a minute.
So if we could put the 4 items just back up on the screen, you had asked to see those. Here they are on one page. These are the ones that were passed. Does everybody see that all right? Oh,
If I may, ma'am, just.
do you want to come up here? Mr. Vieira?
Thank you, ma'am. Maybe what I would suggest, and mind you, if it has to come down to December 1st, I'm fine with that. I just think we should make reasonable attempts to avoid that. Maybe we task, not to give Mr. Shelby all this work, but between today's Tuesday, we come back here on Thursday to report to us on Thursday on dates. And I say if we have to do December 1st, I'm fine with that. But just tasking Mr. Shelby at looking at the calendar for potential, you're staring at, and I'm joking.
Come back
I'm tired.
Thursday to let us know how busy December 1st evening is, so we can bring this.
Yeah, among other options, and I'm fine with whatever. I just don't want to overly
The
complicate it.
question is, what are the other options? And the time,
We'll look at them.
I mean, that takes time.
so And you would want to schedule this for the evening of the 1st ideally, in the evening, as opposed to the daytime?
No, he's saying he wants you to tell us on Thursday what you think.
Yeah.
Instead of us discussing it now, we'll have you come back on Thursday. So I'll withdraw my motion and we'll just,
Well,
Well, I sent
I
out
mean,
the,
Ms. Travis is literally asking right now.
yeah.
I won't withdraw my motion. We can change it on Thursday. Let's put it on the calendar so at least we know it is
Well,
there.
the question
and then we
is,
can change
yeah,
it on Thursday.
that's right, and you have a copy of that, right? We sent out the timeline for the ballot placement. There's very little wiggle room.
So what was your decision, what was your,
We have to wait for
Final
Ms.
comment
Travis to
here.
come back. Is there any other decision we need to make today besides receive and file?
We're putting next steps up so we can see if there's anything.
yes.
No, we don't have to do anything else except decide on Thursday which attorney you and Ms. Zellman are going to recommend, and then what date we're going to pick.
We're clarifying next steps up on the screen just for a moment. Just so that we can put a clear wrap on our session today. So we have here, schedule the first reading to council December 1st in evening, schedule the second reading and adoption by the council on the morning of December 15th. If there's no other recommendations to move forward, what else do you want to do from here to
Can we just vote on
improve?
that and then if
Yes.
we need to change it on Thursday, then we can change it? Okay, can we vote on, so the
Yes.
motion is, the first hearing would be on December 1st at night, and the second hearing would be December 15th in the morning.
Second.
Subject to confirmation on Thursday.
Good. Second and vote. We have 4 hands. We've got all 7. Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Mr. Maniscalco, Mr. Citro, Ms. Hurtak, Mr. Gudis, and Mr. Miranda.
I'd like to make a motion to ask City Council Attorney Shelby and City Attorney Zellman to report to us on Thursday as to which attorney they recommend that we work with to edit the language.
Good clarification. Second? Second, Ms. Hurtak. Any discussion? Call for the vote on that, please. Okay, we've got unanimous. Mr. Carlson, Mr. Vieira, Mr. Maniscalco, Mr. Citro, Ms. Hurtak, Mr. Goods, and Mr. Miranda.
Anything else we need to accomplish today, or can we?
We just had this last question for you to think about. And it simply reads, unless there's any other recommendations to move forward, what might you ask of us or Mr. Shelby to improve the charter interpretation issues and implementation of the charter? Just want you to think about that, if there's anything else from this session that you wanted to take forward. Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Shelby, you had your
I
hand.
think you all did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful picture. Who got that picture for you? On the screen.
That would,
Your marketing team.
Very nice.
If I
I feel like
can,
moving there.
what, excuse me, Madam Clerk?
I saw that.
What? Number 4 on the agenda. Is,
Yes, we did, everything.
wait a second, what is, number 4 on the agenda is going to be moved to Thursday? Or is it going to be removed from the agenda? Oh, I see. Oh, I see that one. Oh, I see.
All right, move to receive and file.
Second.
But you've got an answer.
We have one more comment.
We're just trying to provide you an answer so that you have all the information and know how long you'll be here on December 1st. You have 12 land use hearings and 2 comp plan amendments. You have a total of 14 items on your agenda. So have dinner, eat your Wheaties. Bye.
Wait a second, wait a second, excuse me if I can. If there are 14 items, what is council's decision with regard to, that's the evening of the 1st?
If we want to change our mind, we
You can do it at another day. Yeah, you can do it another. I just wanted to make sure you had the information.
Okay. Was there a motion? Thank you.
It's set for the 12th unless we change it to the 30th, okay? At the end,
It's set for,
I don't blame you. But the conversation was,
it's set for,
all right, Mr. Carlson, it's set for the 12th of December.